Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday, August 11th City Commission meeting. Before we get started, Sherry, could you please read the rules of the meeting?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. If you would please silence your cell phones. The primary format for accessing the meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access cannot be guaranteed due to potential technology issues. When the mayor calls for public comment, please approach the podium to indicate you wish to speak. Virtual participants should use the raise hand function. When prompted, select Join as Panelist. There will be a brief delay as your role changes. Once your name is called, please unmute, turn on your camera, and state your name and zip code before speaking. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The city reserves the right to turn videos off or mute participants. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go forward with the meeting. Next thing up is to approve the agenda. The City Commission reserves the right to amend, supplement, or reorder the agenda during the meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Sellers.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Polian. Commissioner Dever, hopefully you're out there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 3-0. Next up is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and approved by one motion. Members of the governing body may remove items for separate discussion if desired. Members of the public may remove items identified as quasi-judicial for separate discussion if desired. Members of the public will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. Is there any items from the commission that people would like to have removed?
No, Vice Mayor.
Commissioner Polian? Commissioner Dever? So there are 2 items that I would like to pull. So one of them is C5A, and the other one is C7A. So motion to approve the consent agenda minus C5A and C7A. Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Polian, second by Commissioner Sellers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 3-0. So first one up is C5A. So this one, I pulled this one because I just had a couple questions on this use. So the main question was for city staff, do we have examples of other cities that are sort of our peer cities or other ones in Kansas where they're doing self-storage in their downtown district?
Good evening, Commission. Jeff Crick with Planning Development Services. To your question, we don't have that off the top of our heads, no. We know of other communities that are doing that, but the specifics around each community, their zoning code, and their plan is so different, it's very hard to kind of pick out what makes them choose to do it and what not to do it. We did look and research, is it an industrial use or is it a commercial use in a lot of locations? And there's also, quite honestly, a 50-50 split amongst the communities and how they interpret it based on their own zoning codes. So we don't have that information readily available.
And so if we did this, this would be an industrial zoning?
Based in our land development code and the way that our code kind of goes through its parsing of items, that's where we thought it would most likely land.
Okay. Any other questions from any of the commissioners? Commissioner Dever? Okay, so this is a public comment item now that we're generally discussing it. Does anybody in the room have a public comment for this item?
Good evening, Paul Warner Architects. We submitted it, so happy to answer any questions. It's too bad. Oh, Lynn did join us. She did an awesome presentation showing other cities that have done this. I mean, we see it all over. But to probably skip ahead a little bit, I mean, maybe it's pretty obvious. We wrote it, and we wrote it as an SUP, or recommended for that. It's really for Borders Bookstore. I mean, Borders has been vacant for 15 years. Probably all of us wish that, you know, maybe there was an office user, it was mixed use or something else. I wish that building was 2 feet taller, would given us options. The current owner bought it from a pretty big developer in town that was going to move his entire corporate office, all of his other equipment, everything, went through the whole perk process, got incentives, and he still couldn't make it work, and he sold it. So We think the SUP solves any concern about proliferating or going down Mass Street. I don't want it on Mass Street. In New Hampshire, a little off on its own. It's a good use for that building. So I'd appreciate your support. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments in the room?
Eric Hyde, 66046. I normally wouldn't be opposed to what Mike Warner's saying, but I just my gut says that it's just not a good idea to have storage in that building. So I used to be a professional mover for a company here in town and then elsewhere in the United States, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel right to me to have storage go in there. I really liked it when it was Borders. So it was really cool. So I wouldn't really like it if it's a storage place. So that's it.
Any other comments in the room? Any comments out back? Any comments online?
Yes, Vice Mayor. Stephen Watts.
Mr. Courtney, absolutely incredible. We cannot hear out here in Zoom land because that guy has not addressed the microphones. One microphone is being used there for the entire room. I know this isn't on the item. I'm throwing that in though.
Thank you.
That's all the comments.
Throw it back to the commission. Any further?
First, though, I'm going to ask the audio. I thought we had that fixed. Do we also still have to work on that as well?
I thought we did too.
Kurt has checked everything that he can.
Okay. I appreciate that. We'll continue to work on it. I do have some questions, if I may. Can you talk about some of the challenges that folks have faced with the Borders building?
We haven't done too much. While it's a big building, it's really kind of an odd dimension, so it's not quite tall enough for a good second story. So you can figure a second story on the New Hampshire side, but because of the way the roof slopes to the east, you can't do 2 stories, so you wind up with a 17-foot tall ceiling, which is, not really cool for an office, and it just makes it a very hard conversion. Loading dock's not in a great spot, although I would argue for storage, having a loading dock available for box vans and stuff is actually pretty good. That was tough with the grocery store. The neighbors fought the grocery store idea pretty hard. That was probably most of our involvement. We really thought, we did all of the work for First Management and First Construction to move and thought it was going to be a good fit, and then at the end of the day, it didn't work. We've looked at tearing it down and then trying to replace it, but that's also comes with a big number. I think the row houses on the other side are helping, so storage and climate-controlled storage, the use is pretty minimal. It does not have a high impact on parking. Most storage guys would tell you, everybody delivers their stuff, and then they go the next month, and then they go 6 months later, and then they go like a year later, and then they realize that they still have the stuff in storage. But the other thing that hit us is with the cost of construction, we're building our apartments smaller than we ever have to make them more affordable and renting, and we all want more people downtown. So these people have extra stuff and they don't have any place to put it. The same goes for the retailers on Mass Street. They can rent a small storage unit way less than they can pay for a larger space on Mass Street or as a retailer. So I think that's why these other cities, I mean, you see them, we really do see them all over the place. Like I said, Lynn did an awesome presentation at HRC, at the Planning Commission. I don't know if she wants to run through that. Didn't realize there's only going to be 3 of you guys here tonight. And,
Commissioner Devers online.
okay.
Yep.
And then Lynn was going to be out of town on vacation. So on one hand, I'd love to sell this tonight. You know, Planning Commission with a 7-0 vote speaks pretty strong. And I think we're all in agreement, if you watched any of that meeting or the minutes, that we don't want it up and down Mass Street. We don't want it everywhere. And that's why the SUP really makes it a challenge. I mean, somebody's got a site plan it, go through Planning Commission, come to you guys, and I think have a pretty decent argument on why it fits. And hate to keep saying this, you know, but a building that nobody has figured out anything to do for 15 years. You know, in the downtown master plan or whatever the right plan is, it speaks to Borders as it's the only real big retail. I mean, it is a big box, 20,000 square foot retail building, which isn't really needed downtown right now. And just wish there was a better answer, but I mean, they look good. The access is all from the alley. You're not gonna, you know, there's no garage doors on New Hampshire Street. I think it'd be good, 40,000 square foot building there and make it, you know, give it a good purpose. So happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts before we vote?
I think that Planning Commission 7-0 is pretty compelling. It's rare. I do wish it could be something else, I'll be honest. But if there's challenges and it having something sit there for 15 years, but this is just the zoning, right? So we don't have anything going into that building currently. So I will probably vote in favor of it.
And just to double check that, this is a use case available in the downtown district. It's not saying that building will become that, right? Oh, Jeff, sorry.
Special use permit.
Yes, this is just a text amendment. This is not a rezoning or a site plan for the property. This just amends the CD zoning district to allow this particular use.
So I'm not going to vote for this, and I totally hear what you guys are saying. I just don't believe that a self-storage designation is compatible with what we're trying to pull off in downtown Mass right now. You know, this year we've had new housing, new retail, new jobs, and we're getting ready to do a riverfront master plan, what that looks like, how that affects the downtown master plan. And on top of that, you know, Mass Street's one of the top 3 tourist destinations in the entire state of Kansas. Or, you know, as CNN said, you know, a place where shoppers can find the kind of independent stores that in other towns and cities have long since vanished, and one that bustles during the day and stays lively well into the evening. I just personally don't believe storage is compatible with what we're trying to do downtown right now. So I will be voting no on this.
Can I talk, or is that okay?
No, please, go ahead.
Can you hear me? I'm having audio problems, so I wanted to make sure you could hear me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's been going around. Go ahead, we can hear you.
All right, cool, thank you. Yeah, just since I'm online here, I just want to make sure, you know, people have been, you know, Americans have been starting to consume so much that they need a place to put their stuff. And if we want people living around downtown Lawrence, I believe that it's going to be a purpose and a use that probably is going to be necessary, because if we're trying to encourage density, then we're going to need a place for people to put their stuff. And if we want to encourage them to drive 5 or 6 miles, you know, out of town, that's fine. But I feel like this is a reasonable request, and I'm in favor of it.
Commissioner Sills, anything you'd like to add?
I was going to call for the vote, but I just wanted to add, I think what might be missing in translation is that if you look at what's permitted for CD district downtown, of all of the each of the categories, roughly plus or minus 50 of these would be either permitted or permitted under special use. And what I appreciate, what a lot of municipalities and businesses and developers might appreciate about special use is that it signals, or it says to developers, if the ingredients are right, then it's worth a consider. And that consideration falls on the governing body. And so while there are several things from R1 all the way to P2 that have S for special use and P for permitted, and the P is permitted, the S just simply means that's if what is the temperature and the flavor of the governing body. So for us to preempt that, I'm not a big fan of preemption. And if there's possibility, I'm always open to possibility, because I know at the end of the day, if the ingredients aren't right, then I'm just not going to vote for it, because it has to get the permit. Then we got to do the zoning and the planning and design and all that. So for me to preempt 4 steps simply because I don't know, or I'm not sure, or it doesn't feel right in my stomach. I mean, it may not feel right in your stomach now, but depending on how we activate Riverfront, it may be some folks there that be like, man, I wish we had a storage unit close by. So I think it's just the idea, like, I don't want to get caught up in saying, if I do this, this is going to come. The correlation causation is not necessarily there. And so my rationale for voting for it is that it provides an opportunity. It provides an opportunity for us to possibly get someone in there, to get it on the tax roll, and maybe a higher rate. But I don't want to preempt that. And I think voting this down preempts that, and it takes your authority away. So why take authority away when you don't need to?
Do we have a motion?
Move to adopt on first reading ordinance number 10224 for the text amendment AMDT-26-00008 to Chapter 20 of the Land Development Code of the City of Lawrence, Kansas, to add the use self-storage interior to the use table 20-8-1, principal use table in section 20-3, bless you, of the CD Downtown Commercial District.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed. Passes 3-1. The next one is C7A, and I pulled this because I was outside talking to Chris Flowers, and he had a question about this item, so I pulled it. If you want to maybe give a quick presentation on that, and then we can open it to public comment for that after.
Yeah, my name is Aaron Parker. I'm the project manager for MS10005, Mass Street Multimodal Improvements Project. The project in the 26 to 30 CIP had an estimated construction cost of $6.1 million, and since then costs and scope have increased somewhat, and the project received about $3.5 million in state grants and had a match of less than $1 million. The match is typically 20%. And so this item is for additional grant funds to help make up some of the difference in scope and just time-based construction cost increases over inflationary-based increases. Yeah, that's a quick summary.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, any other questions from the governing body before we go to public comment?
I do, but I'll wait for public comment.
Okay. Public comment for this item is now open. If anybody would like to speak on this item.
Hi, this is Chris Flowers. My main question is does this add anything? Are we building anything extra? Because if it is, I would like to know ahead of time what else is going to be built with the money instead of just approving it and then like, oh, you can spend it as you like later. So that was my main concern is, are we adding to the project that was already approved? Because I'd rather we just build it as is. But I mean, if this is just about getting money so we can build what we already approved, that's one thing. But if it's also adding more to it, like I'd be against that because it's spending extra. So that wasn't originally approved. So that's my main concern. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Any other public comments in the room? Any other public comments out back? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Harry. Yep.
Eric Hyde, 66046. I asked the gentleman who presented the grant stuff, and I was hoping because I didn't understand what was going on, but he told me about it, and I just don't think we should have bike lanes down Mass Street. I think it's really dangerous. There's a lot of drinkers, a lot of drunk driving, other stuff. I just don't like it. I was hit by a car, actually when I was 12. I was crossing a crosswalk, and this baby blue old vintage car just boom, and I went up on the hood of the car, and I fell off onto the road. This is the second time I got hit by a car. And that was at 17th and Mass, by that cat shelter, whatever it is. So I mean, my life is defined by bicycle accidents, and I just don't like it. I mean, I like people riding their bikes, but you know, it's fun riding your bike, but what about all the kids, you know, that are gonna ride down that street? Let me give you an example. My dad, you know how you used to go over the bridge by the city hall here into North Lawrence, and there's, you know, it was kind of dangerous you going towards the tunnel there. And my dad, we're driving one day, and he said, you know, someone's gonna hit that area there across from Johnny's, and they're gonna die. And then it happened. And then after that happened, they fixed the area. So, you know, I don't want to be like warning you guys about this and some kid dies or somebody else dies. I just really don't think it's a good idea to put bicycle lanes on Mass Street. People speed on that street. They want to, get downtown. It's just not a good idea. I'm sorry. Otherwise, I'd be kind of for it, but seems like a nice guy, but I just don't like it. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments in the room? Any other comments out back? How about online?
No.
Okay, bring it back to the commission. So to Chris's question, so is this a supplemental that adds to the overall project, or could you talk about how the question that he had asked?
Yes, Chris Flowers, you had asked about the increase in scope that this increased funding would be helping to pay for, and I believe most of that increased scope is stormwater improvements along the corridor. We had reports of flooding out into the middle of the street when you're driving down there and heavy rains. And this is to add inlets on, I think, at least 2 blocks where there are no inlets now. So it's mostly a stormwater increase that the scope changed in that way over the last year.
Gotcha. I don't have any other questions. Any other questions from the commission?
But at the end of the day, we were able to secure additional grant dollars in order to cover that scope, or
Yes.
portions of it.
Yes, and there were programmatic funds in the various programs in MSO to help cover the match.
The match.
They were already allocating, we were already planning to allocate to the project. We just have to earmark them as match to this
Match.
grant. And to answer I know I wasn't asked this.
Oh, please,
but
go
to answer
ahead.
the gentleman's question, the bike lanes are going to be the first in Lawrence protected bike lanes. I didn't add that to when I was talking with you. Curbs between the bike lanes and the driving lane. So we're aiming for something like the city of Austin, Texas has with all ages, all abilities. Families and kids can use it without fear of getting hit by someone just crossing a painted line. and we're going to use this project as essentially a pilot to see if that works here in Lawrence, in a signature corridor of the city that will connect KU to downtown. That's the goal. And it follows the Lawrence Bikes plan for putting the bike lane on Mass Street and not on a side street where there are a lot of stop signs and things like that. So more throughput and connectivity for bikes.
Sharon?
How much money have we spent so far? Do we know that number?
I think completing design is what's been spent so far. We are looking to advertise the project in the next few weeks, I believe. So we spent something like $750,000 on design in total.
To our esteemed city manager, may I have you weigh in on this project, please? Have you had a chance to review it? I can't imagine you've been super busy at all, but.
Honorable Vice Chair, members of the commission, members of the public, thank you for the question. Any traffic calming project or any hazard elimination safety project or any carbon reduction project is a really good project, not just for the environment, but for the protection of pedestrian, bicyclists, and the public. Lawrence is known to be a bicyclist community, and I think it's a really good thing. And a type 2, that what our project manager is referring to is a type 2 bike lane, which is protected. Again, cities all over the world, they use that type of improvement, and it separates vehicles, cars moving at 30 miles an hour plus from bicyclists, from pedestrians. And so, again, it's used all over the world. I know cities like Barcelona, for example, cities that our project manager mentioned, Portland, Austin, those are cities that have used it. So, and the other thing is that when we have partnership with KDOT, and we're only really paying about 20%, I believe, of the grand total, that's always a plus for us. That's infrastructure that we can put in, and that is something that can help us. That's my opinion as a former traffic engineer who's done plenty of those projects.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Although I will say, we know that you get KDOT money, projects take 3 times as long and cost 3 times as much. So I'm glad we're getting the match. I think that's probably something you're happy about, and I love free money. Originally, I will say I have voted a previous agenda item pertaining to this project down because solely of concerns where we are fiscally, knowing where we are, not adding anything new, but it's really hard. I don't want to be the one to lose this money. I don't want to be the one responsible for that. I do ask, though, moving forward, I have received a lot of calls from folks who are opposed to all the bike lanes. And I know that our trajectory has been to really include these bike lanes. Honestly, I'm ambivalent personally. I have told those folks that are opposed to the bike lanes that they certainly need to voice their opinion here or send emails. But I'm just stating that I will approve this. I don't want to lose this funding. But I would really like us to look at projects in the future.
And if I may, just as a side benefit, sometimes when you install bike lanes, you actually have to look at traffic signal operations from a timing perspective. So we'll get an updated traffic signal timing, and those can be really expensive as a standalone, so it keeps us up to date on the traffic flow, and that's something that could be a huge benefit to us as well. So there is other advantages to creating infrastructure projects like that. Bike lanes also, if there's issues with the pavement, we have the ability to repair that pavement as well. So there's multi-benefits.
Traffic flow is definitely a benefit. I've heard just as many folks frustrated with that, so that's awesome. Thank you for weighing in on that.
Aaron, off the top of your head, do you know how much of the project is grant funded?
Off the top of my head, I have some numbers here. The current estimate, including a contingency of 5% and right-of-way or easement acquisition and internal costs, is around $7 million, roughly. It's an estimate until we get bids in. And I believe the city contribution to that is somewhere near, it's not 20%, because 20% of the grant funds of $3.8 million has to be matched by the city, but then there's additional costs to the project. I think our costs are somewhere around $3 million or $3.2 million of the
So we're
$7
about
million.
roughly 50/50. So
Roughly.
50% of the
Yeah.
project is being covered by grants.
I'd say a little more like 60-40.
And I like that even better. I was using fuzzy math. I like that even better. So roughly 60% of this project is grant funded.
Correct.
Why don't we go back, why don't we get back to you and send you that information? I want to verify it.
That's fine. And it just based on the numbers, based on knowing what's on the CIP and just fuzziness, we know that roughly plus or minus 50% of this project is grant funded, which when it comes to CIP projects, oftentimes that was one of the tasks of the commission, was that if we can be aggressive in finding grant dollars to subsidize or offset some of the costs, and that was it. And I think this is a project that shows that and shows with a project that speaks to what the community is wanting. It may not be the community writ large, but we have a community that would like to see themselves reflected in it, and this is a way of doing that. And it's going to connect, Mass Street will connect to 9th Street. 9th Street will then build out that corridor between downtown and KU. 19th Street might be a beast, but I mean, it already has two ways. I think when people are trying to conceptualize whether or not this could work, it's kind of been working around town. We just have to shift our perspective. So,
Right.
you know, I see this as we've addressed a concern. We found grant dollars to subsidize covering the cost of that concern. That will just make this an even stronger project. And so I do appreciate that transparency and us being able to celebrate us getting those additional dollars. So
Yep, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the addition was stormwater, right? Because
Yes.
we approved that a few months ago.
Yes,
Okay.
but the 26 to 30 CIP didn't include that at the
Didn't
time
include
it
it.
was adopted. So
Yeah.
those were more current additions, yeah.
Yeah.
That was approved for design, yes, the amendment for design, the additional stormwater, right?
and we found the dollars to cover the stormwater.
I'm sorry?
And we found the dollars to cover the stormwater.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not saying no to free money. Commissioner Dever, do you have any thoughts?
I think this is a good time, and I appreciate Majid's comment about getting the exact numbers. I think it's important for people to understand what our contribution to this project is and what it's paying for. And the fact that we can get a grant like this to help us with making Lawrence a more bike-friendly community, the fact we can have the path to our downtown on Mass Street, which goes through neighborhoods and smaller commercial areas and then down to one lane on each direction. The fact that this road is kind of a mixed bag already, I feel like anything we can do to improve safety on this road and to allow people to ride is a benefit to more than just a few people in the community, and I'm excited to see it happen.
Thank you. Motion. We have a motion on this one.
Move to authorize and execute Authorize the execution of KDOT Agreement Number 630-26, Supplemental Agreement Number 1 to KDOT Agreement Number 67-25 to increase the Transportation Alternatives and Carbon Reduction Program grant for the Massachusetts Streets 14th Street through 23rd Street Multimodal Improvement Project, MS1-00005, by the amount of $306,858.
Second. Is there a second?
Second?
So we have a motion by Commissioner Sellers, second by Commissioner Dever. Any other comments before we vote? Nope. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Okay, next one up on the list is the city manager's report.
Thank you. It's going to be short for the second week in a row, but a point of privilege for me is to share that the city has appointed Joe Hardy as the fire chief for, bear with me, Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Don't quiz me on it.
Okay, just say.
Give me more time. Also, a point of privilege for me to say that I've appointed Lindsay Hart as well to Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Did I get that right as well? Yeah. 2 in a row. I'm on a roll. The other thing is, I know I've discussed with the commission the opportunity for an information session on the 4th Tuesday. That's something that I want to propose in the future, and we'll discuss the items that staff can bring to those specific meetings, definitely including the budget, definitely including the state of police and fire, and definitely including also the building that has been talked about, which is the new MSO building, as well as the state of our airport. So those are some of the things that I would love for us to share with you, some information and some thoughts on it. And so it'll be that memo will be coming this before this Friday. So wanted to share that a little bit. And I'm all over the place this past couple of weeks, which has been fun, but I need to focus this week on bringing you an updated 3-week adventure. So that's my report. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Okay. Next up is City Commission reports. The City Commissioners may report on committee or community meetings and provide comments on upcoming meetings, events, accolades, and items on the consent agenda. This is not a public comment item. Commissioner Sellers?
No report.
Okay. Commissioner Poling?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Commissioner Dever?
No, thank you. I'll spare you my poor telecommunication. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I have 3 things, just some thanks for people in the community. So definitely want to thank LDC-FM. Imagine, you eventually get that, yeah. For the truck push-in this past weekend, Commissioner Sellers and I were there. A lot of the city staff was there. It was just a great event. We were able to actually clean the truck before we pushed it in. It was where Chief Hardy was announced as the chief, so it was a really, really special moment. There were a lot of kids there, a lot of people from the community, so just thank you to LDC-FM for that. Also wanted to thank city staff and Corey for being at the Kids Expo. That was at USD 497. So, they gave out 1,300 pairs of shoes. I mean, isn't that crazy? I mean, so one, it just shows that there's a need in the community for events like that. So just thank you to the school board, the USD staff for being able to do that. I saw a lot of kids that I knew from Prairie Park there, so that was a really fantastic event. And then I wanted to recognize just like a really great public-private partnership between LCS and Peaslee Tech. So they're trying to build 125 beds at LCS right now. 52 of those are going to be built by LCS, but the rest is going to be donated time and materials from Peaslee Tech. So that is just fantastic in the community. So, yeah, I mean, kudos to LCS, kudos to James, Misty, and Kevin and the Peaslee Tech team. That's it for me.
I have to say something. I am so sorry to Joe Hardy. Joe and Lindsay, congratulations. I apologize, I did not say that. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so. But I am very excited for you guys. It can be very difficult sitting in an interim role for an extended amount of time, so now is your opportunity to really shine and make it your own. And I want to wish all the teachers in USD 497 good luck at the upcoming school year. I think I was a little depressed trying to get my kids through all of the things. So hang in there. You are heavily supported, and we appreciate you. And that is all I have. Thank you for humoring me.
Thank you. Any other comments before we go to the regular agenda items? Okay. First item on the regular agenda is to consider awarding bid, I'll read this for friends at home. Consider awarding bid 26000018 for the investment advisory services to Columbia Capital Management LLC and authorizing the city manager to execute the professional services agreement. It's also to consider awarding bid 260018 for the, is that the same thing? It's a copy. So the same thing copied. Anyways, please.
One's investment, one's
investment
advisory.
But you are correct. It is the same bid number.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Rochelle Matthews, the Director of Finance and the Sound Fiscal Stewardship Champion. So tonight before you, you have the result of our procurement process for both municipal advisory service and investment advisory service. I'd like to take a minute to thank my partners across the city, as this was a collaborative effort. These services span much more than just finance. They support the city manager's office, economic development, city commission, and many more. And so we worked across our teams to make sure we had a scope that would meet the needs for our team today, as well as set up to meet the needs of the team in the future. So our process typically is for a regular RFP, that's about a 60-day process. However, this one was more complex, and so we fall into typically a 90 to 100-day window to make sure we hit the advertisement phase, the question and answer phase, then an evaluation, and finally the awarding phase, which is where we are now. That includes routing and approval for city commission. So we released this particular RFP in early March of this year, which put the end of that 90 days into June, which we were very busy in the city of Lawrence in June. So as this involved the economic development director, planning director, MSO, and finance, we did have some internal influences by those factors of World Cup, our audit, which is coming to you here shortly in this evening, that necessitated some extra time on the end to make sure we did a thoughtful and thorough review. So with that, I am here to stand for questions. We also have the advisory team here to answer any questions or.
Just first question for me. How long has it been since we've done this before? Got a new municipal advisor? Is this something we do every 5 to 10 years, or what's the usually timeline for having a municipal advisor RFP?
The typical best practice is to review on a 5-year period, and then to either extend your current contract if it's meeting your needs or put it out to bid.
Okay. Questions from others on the commission?
Real quick on the RFP process, can you, how many respondents did you have?
Sure. We received 3 responses to our request for both services. And in this particular scope, we asked for the flexibility to award one or the other to independent firms or to award them as a package. And that is ultimately what the evaluation and scoring team came to a decision to do.
And we are focusing on investment advisory services right now. May I speak with our consultant?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of the commission, my name is Jeff White with Columbia Capital Management. It's truly an honor to be here, and thank you so much in advance for your consideration tonight.
Great, thank you. I'll probably have more questions for you under the MA side, but for the investment advisory services, I'm obviously you're going to cash flow, right? You're going to be cash flowing, staggering, et cetera. That goes in the no crap category kind of thing. But I would like your professional opinion on a finance / investment / audit committee. Do you typically work with an investment committee comprised of members of the community with a staff liaison when we talk about investment, anything related to investments?
We typically don't. Every city works differently. Some have committee structures, some don't. Certainly, many that have committee structures have a finance committee, and the finance committee is made up of members of the governing body typically, and then supported by staff. In Kansas, as you know, we have a very limited range of permitted investments that we have to choose from, and a pretty restrictive amount of time, the tenor for which items can be invested. And so those conversations tend to be pretty quick, again, because the list of permitted investments and the range of how far you can go out is pretty limited. But certainly, if that's an interest to Lawrence, we're happy to participate in those conversations.
I am interested, but I'm fine putting it under the umbrella of a finance committee. More important than anything, policy. Policy, obviously liquidity, how far out we're willing to go. I mean, you're right, we're pretty passive. There's not much that we can do, but that was what I was wanting to know. You are out of Missouri. How many cities in Kansas do you represent?
So the company is a Missouri LLC. It was founded by two original partners, one on the Kansas side and one in St. Louis. Our administrative headquarters is in Merriam.
Okay.
So we have 18 total folks across the firm. We have staffed offices in Merriam, in Chicago, Phoenix, and Southern California. The bulk of our team, more than half of us, work out of our Kansas office. And similarly sized communities in Kansas that we serve, Topeka, investment and municipal advisory, Olathe, municipal and investment advisory. We work with Overland Park on economic development items. We work with a number of Johnson County communities as well. We also work with Kansas Turnpike Authority, investment and municipal advisory, Water One. And then we work with dozens of other communities across the country.
I know plenty of Kansas cities that work with you guys, so I'm definitely comfortable. I just like to throw out a little bit of information for public's sake. That is all I have. I would be interested in talking about a finance committee, but we don't need to do that now, but just kind of throwing that out there. So that's all I have.
And for the public, I mean, I've done some research on this, but I'd love to hear if you were trying to talk to somebody in our community and what a municipal advisor does.
No.
Like, how would you answer that?
We're on the investment advisory.
Oh, okay.
Do we care about keeping them separate?
Oh.
We
Mr.
put them on as
Sellers?
one item. It'll be two separate
Yeah.
actions, but it's just one.
Okay, great. Then I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir.
No, it's all good.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, happy to answer that. A municipal advisor is actually statutorily defined. The name municipal advisor came out of the Dodd-Frank Consumer Protection Act after the global credit crisis in 2010. Colloquially, we are known as financial advisors. Historically, municipal advisor is a new name. Our job is to serve as the city's fiduciary in any transaction involving municipal bonds or municipal securities. That makes us unique among the folks that participate in those transactions. We are the only party that is sitting on the city side of the table that has that fiduciary duty to the city. So our job is to provide advice to the city in the city's best interest, putting its interests above anybody else's, including our own.
Okay. Commissioner Sellers, Commissioner Dever, any other questions?
Of course, if we're going to do the MA side, then we'll do the MA side. What does onboarding look like?
Yeah, so fortunately, it's been our privilege to serve as the city's investment advisor for a number of years. And so we are familiar with a lot of what goes on at the city from the perspective of cash flows. We also, as you can imagine, have responded to the city's RFPs for municipal advisor in the past as well. So we have some familiarity with your current rating status, your debt outstanding, and those kinds of things. The onboarding process should be pretty quick. We understand, we work with your staff, on our finance staff, on a regular basis. So it's really a couple phases. So the first one is making sure that we come up to speed on everything that we need to know. There's a lot of research that we've already gathered on our own. But I think one of the hallmarks that makes our firm different from some of our competitors is that we treat every relationship as a unique relationship. We don't have a box that we ask our clients to fit in. We really try to meet them where they are. We have clients that have a number of full-time people that do nothing but work on the bond portfolio. They demand a different kind of service level than a small community with one person in the finance shop who, when it comes to a bond transaction, basically says, wake me up when it's over. I don't have time to deal with this. And we've got to be responsive to those folks and everybody in between. And so this is a conversation with your finance staff to make sure that we are meeting them where they need us to meet them with respect to the level of support that we provide. The rubber really meets the road when we get to actual transactions, and that gives us the opportunity to sort of get in the flow and the rhythm of how that existing finance team works together, and making sure that we are contributing, not getting in the way of those folks, and doing everything that we can to help facilitate that transaction. We regularly work with Gilmore & Bell, and specifically with Kevin Wempe and Chanel Perez. So we have a lot of familiarity, working relationship with them as well, so that will also come along pretty quickly. But we're going to review everything from ACFR to official statements for prior transactions to the gestalt of your outstanding debt on both the revenue side and the GO side, financial policies and procedures. And like I said, I don't think it'll take us very long to come up to speed.
Okay. In terms of debt issuance, are you providing long-term financial plans
Without a doubt.
that tie both mills and utility rates?
Sure.
To the extent of each issuance?
And beyond, right? So on the GO side, we are constantly looking at what is the impact on the mill levy. And ideally, we craft a long-term debt structure that provides for downward sloping debt service. Ideally, that means that your highest level of debt service in any year from today going all the way into the future is this year. Because what that means is when next year's bond transaction comes along, we can layer it on top of the existing debt and not put upward pressure on the mill levy. On the utility revenue side, it works similarly, but we're looking at debt service coverage typically as that target. If we maintain the constant debt service coverage ratio, hopefully we are, again, not putting a lot of pressure on utility rates. It's a challenge. We are putting ourselves in a position to maintain that the city's credit rating over time, and we are making smart decisions about the tenor of the debt as well when it comes to that. But particularly on the revenue side, because each transaction that we do is on parity with the prior transactions, we have to be super smart about how those documents are created, because you live with the language in those documents until the very last bond that is issued under those documents matures. And so making a change, for instance, from year to year on a general obligation deal, each one of those stands on its own. We have the ability to change our approach somewhat on structure, those kinds of things. On the revenue side, once you come up with your model for how to fund a debt service reserve fund, you're stuck with that for a very long time. So we need to be really, really smart about how we're structuring a debt service reserve. Is it series by series, or is it umbrella reserve? Those kinds of things.
Your relationship with underwriters.
Yeah, so we have a positive working relationship with underwriters that is necessarily a bit in conflict, right? So underwriters have they have two sets of clients to make happy. They have investors and they have issuers, and those clients have diametrically opposed outcomes that they expect from a transaction. The highest possible yields on one hand and the lowest possible yields on the other. The least flexibility that the issuer has and the most flexibility that the issuer has. And so our job is to make sure that we are the arbiter of that inherent conflict that underwriters have on behalf of and in favor of our local government client. In Kansas, we've got a statutory mandate. New money transactions on the GO side, 2 million and higher, have to be done competitively. We also believe very strongly in the competitive sale process. And really, given the city's ratings, there's no reason not to use competitive sales on either the city's GO debt or utility rev debt, with exceptions to everything, but very, very exceptional exceptions in this particular case when we would look at doing something different. In that case, we are taking feedback that we get in the market for how we structure the bid document, which we call a notice of sale in the bond world. And so we're taking into account feedback that we're hearing from the market about coupon restrictions or tenor or those types of things, how long folks want to see the official statement in the market before we schedule our bond transaction. And we incorporate those kind of market bits of feedback into that notice of sale, but beyond that, there's no interaction with those underwriters until we know who the winner is, right? On the date of sale, the bids come in at 9:30 in the morning, whatever, we know who the winner is, and then we're interacting with those underwriters to wrap up the sale. At that point, there's nothing to negotiate. It's just mechanical, sort of getting from the bid to a final bid form and then in front of you all for an approval. On negotiated transactions, which the city will be facing on some economic development debt coming along, that relationship is very different. And the underwriter plays obviously a critical role, not only in placing those bonds in the hands of the investors, but in crafting the transaction to start with. And we're much more of partners in those kinds of situations, to make sure that we are understanding from them what it's going to take to get those bonds executed in the market, given changing market conditions. And so that relationship tends to be very collaborative, very interactive, and those economic development transactions also take a very long time. So it's important that you're interacting with folks very professionally along the way, because you're going to be stuck with them for 6 or 8 months or longer dealing with a bond transaction.
Okay, a couple more questions. I am comfortable with you guys. In March and every year prior since 2015, legislators are looking to limit us
Yes.
in terms of the tax lid, and this past March scared the hell out of everybody. When it comes back up, which it will, do you feel prepared to manage, guide us through what, can you help us through that? I can't imagine we're going to see quite what we saw in March as far as adding debt in there, but I wouldn't be surprised.
So two things. One is, before that legislation hits the governor's desk, we will be leading the fight on your behalf and on behalf of all Kansas local governments to try to make sure that whatever property tax reform comes to pass acknowledges that we have in Kansas the gold standard of bond issuance, which is called unlimited tax general obligation bonds. And the only possible consequence of making that more challenging is increasing the cost of borrowing for local governments in Kansas, which goes completely opposite of what the legislative goals are, which is to push down demand on property taxation. And that's the message that we've tried to convey directly in legislative testimony, in cooperation with the League of Kansas Municipalities, in cooperation with our clients' own legislative lobbyists. We've been very, very active the last 2 sessions in showing up, providing testimony, providing expertise, running calculations. What would this cost us? The thing that terrifies me about what the legislature did last year, and that the governor thankfully vetoed, is they killed unlimited tax general obligation bonds without creating anything in its place. So there are states, Illinois is one that we work in, that has limited tax bonds as well as unlimited tax bonds. And if the investment market understands the rules under which limited tax bonds are issued, they will buy those happily and willingly because they understand the rules. Where we would have ended up, had the governor not vetoed that bill, is in a spot where we didn't have unlimited tax GO anymore, but we didn't have anything as an alternative. And my speculation is that we would have had a period of time where maybe Lawrence and Topeka and OP and Olathe could have issued debt, but the 600 Kansas cities and the 103 Kansas counties, 102 Kansas counties that aren't gigantic, and most school districts, save for maybe the top 5 or 7, would have lost their market access completely because the bond market would not have taken the time necessary to think through what the implications are of a situation where you issue debt and the debt service is now competing with cops and firefighters and teachers and ambulance drivers and all those other costs that are segregated from debt service demands, and had that bill gone into effect, would have been all effectively in the same pot. So I'm 100% with you on having been terrified in each of the last couple marches.
Terrified.
And I'm terrified about what next session will look like as well. So we will figure it out together. And I think one of the benefits that we have as a firm is we work in a variety of states. And our friends in Missouri don't have nearly the ease of debt issuance that we do here. In fact, it's a royal pain. Mm-hmm. And California is the same way, a royal pain. Oklahoma is the same way, a royal pain. And we've found ways to make it work in those states, and we'll find a way to make it work here. But we need to be prepared for some pretty rough seas for a little bit of time until things sort of work themselves out. But I'm hoping that we can bring some sanity to the debt issuance process, regardless of sort of what that property tax limitation legislation looks like.
Great. Ms. Matthews, what are you most looking forward to having a new municipal advisor?
Well, I think one of the benefits to some of the GFOA best practices in some of the recommendations for rotation is learning, expanding, seeing different philosophies, exploring different tools. You know, it's a process of continuous improvement and growth, and making sure that we as a finance team and a city manager team are bringing the right tools to the city to face the challenges that we're facing.
Okay. And I'm hoping in every debt issuance you are present and you discuss some of the debt issuance that's going on, just in general. That's what I would love to see, but
Yeah.
I don't know if the other commissioners are interested.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of the commission, I would be remiss if I didn't introduce my colleagues. It definitely takes a team. So my colleagues, Kaylin Dwyer, Stacy Walter, and Faith Trimmer are here tonight. Kaylin and Faith will be actively and integrally involved on the debt side. Stacy is already actively and integrally involved on the investment advisory side. The other thing I didn't mention early on is we are a firm that is owned by 6 of its employees, and you have 3 of the firm's owners here tonight.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
And then, yeah, a question, so we had a lot of the debt discussion that happened in March. So how does getting a new municipal advisor in the middle of this, are we changing course on some of the things? Are we going to talk about that in the future? I'd be interested to see how, what you're finding so far to your point about best practices, like how those recommendations are adjusting some of the forecasts that you guys have already laid out.
So as far as operationalizing the new contract, that is a process we would finance and the various teams would work out with the city manager's office to wind down certain projects that have active agreements and then get set up for new projects. As far as changing the forecasts, obviously the onboarding process and looking at the deliverables and the documents, especially supporting a new city manager and their priorities, that will incorporate that into the onboarding process. And those documents then would come to you either in city commissioner or city manager reports or finance presentation or with an actual transaction.
Okay, makes sense.
And you're planning on looking back, right? You're reviewing what we've done so far. And will we get a report back, whether it be a memo or that's what we are hoping to get? I hope I'm not asking you to repeat yourself.
Yeah, yes, and we already have some of those reports. Columbia Capital, as part of our investment advisory services previously, we did engage them for a comprehensive debt profile that breaks out a lot of market data on them, but it's more of a static report of where the portfolio sits in time rather than some sort of a forecast or a retroactive work. But we will have to, as a team, have to understand where we have been and what we have been doing to figure out where we're going forward. So that will be part of the onboarding process and part of the deal structuring for future items.
Great.
Look forward to seeing some of those memos when they come out. Commissioner Sells, any comments? Okay. Commissioner Dever, any comments before public comment?
I just have one question about the fee and just the standard. If you could speak to the industry standard and kind of how this matches up to what normally other communities pay.
Sure. So we will continue our current fee structure for our investment portfolio. So that is based on the size of our portfolio. We have a set rate. So obviously in times where we have more funds on deposit in our portfolio, our fees will be higher, where in times where our portfolio is smaller, the fees will slide smaller. Now, on the municipal advisory side, it's a little bit more of a complex discussion that these are a wide array of scope and services and departments. And so for a bond transaction, you will notice in the scope and schedule of fees that there's a scale. The size of the bond dictates the size of the fee. Whereas on economic development fees, if we have around 10 active projects, our fees for those services will be very different than if we have 1. And so we have tried to set the scope up so that it right sizes to the amount of activity that we are doing here in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission before we open it to public comment? Thank you. Any comments from people that are anybody who's in the room? Any comments from people who are out back? Any comments from people online?
Nope.
Such an amazing presentation. It's fantastic.
And it's boring to most people. Sorry.
So we'll bring it back to the commission for any final comments before we vote. Okay, so Sherry, question, do we have to do 2 motions in a row, or is it motion 1, motion 2? What would be the best way?
Yeah, I would just read them as 2 separate motions the way they're listed, because you're awarding the bid, but for 2 separate services.
Okay. Do we have
Did that answer that?
Yes, no, absolutely. I appreciate that. Do we have a motion for action number 1?
I will move to award bid 260018 for the investment advisory services to Columbia Capital Management LLC and authorize the city manager to execute the professional services agreement.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Polian, second by Commissioner Sellers. Any comments before we vote? Nope. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those,
Aye.
all those opposed? Okay, passes 4-0. For action number 2, do we have a motion?
I will make the motion to award bid 260018 for the municipal advisory services to Columbia Capital Management LLC and authorize the city manager to execute the professional services agreement.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have motion by Commissioner Polian, second by Commissioner Sellers. Any comments before we vote? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next one up is a work session item. Work sessions provide an opportunity for the City Commission to discuss items in greater detail. The Commission will take no binding action on items presented during this time. Work session topics are eligible for public comment. Members of the public will be limited to 3 minutes for comments, and we will receive the 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report and Audit.
Good evening. It's the finance show today. So Rochelle Matthews, Director of Finance. And so we are pleased tonight to bring you the 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. I personally will shorten that to ACFR from here on out to make this a little more efficient. But this is our annual financial audit process. So this process really starts back in December of 2025, where we begin a robust internal control and discovery process. And then the city staff spends roughly the next 90 days finalizing year-end transactions, reviewing documents, making our prepared by client list of things that we show up on day one and provide to the auditor. That list is roughly over 275 items now, independently repaired as part of the audit. And then usually typically in April, we move into the active audit and review phase where our auditors are actively engaging and reviewing transactions, asking questions, asking for further documentation, ultimately then ending with the preparation of the financials that includes my management discussion analysis, their audit opinion, and all the supporting schedules to get us to where we are now with a finished audit. So I am pleased this year to really thank all my partners across City of Lawrence. This could not be done without all our finance teams, my assistant director, Jennifer Worth, and many other team members and accountants in all the departments across the city. This is a very collaborative effort. We're trying to summarize a year's worth of financial information into a very complex document. So for this year, we are pleased to report we have an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion, or more colloquial known as a clean audit, with some compliance and other compliance report findings that we are actively working to address. So I would also like to take some time to thank RSM. They have been serving the city's independent auditor since 2018, and I'd really like to thank their diligence and time and effort into making sure we have fairly presented and clean audits. So with that, that is my spiel, and I will turn it over to Kristen Hughes, who is the lead engagement partner for the city, so that she can provide her summary to you.
All right. Excuse me. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to go through the audit this evening. I'm going to go ahead and go into, as part of the audit, as Rochelle noted, there are 3 deliverables you've been provided copies with. One is the aquifer that she referenced. The second, I'll say bound document, is the city's compliance report, and then the stapled packet is what's referred to as the required communications to those charged with governance. So I'm going to start with the required communications. Under auditing standards, there are certain topics that the auditor reports back to those charged with governance on those items. So walking through the contents of this letter, on the first page, you'll just see it. It serves as a reminder, first of all, of responsibilities. And these are all laid out in the engagement letter that is also signed before the audit commences each year. This just points to the standards that we follow in the performance of our audit. and also serves as a reminder the responsibility that management has as it relates to the accuracy of the financial statements as well as the information we receive during the audit process. Plan, scope, and timing of the audit. This references a communication that was issued before what we call final fieldwork, when Rochelle walked through the timeline that goes through and summarizes what does the scope and timing of the audit look like. Next item, this is going to go through, it says significant accounting practices, estimates, and disclosures. So the first topic this covers is significant accounting estimates. This is to note that there are certain areas in the financials that are subjective. They have estimates prepared by management. We take a look at these specifically as part of the audit to make sure they're reasonable with city policies, also consistent with, comparable with peers in the industry, et cetera. So examples of these are items, fair value of investments. We were just talking about investments, right? There are different valuation techniques, for example. So that's an example of an estimate component of that. Another significant one is CAPER's pension liability, for example, right? There's specialist actuaries that are involved in that, but that is an estimate as far as projecting those long-term obligations that the city is going to have for that plan. The next item on page 2, we identify if there's any new accounting policies that were implemented in the year, more specifically if they had a significant impact on the financial statements. There was one new standard that the GASB released this year, certain risk disclosures. Upon implementation, management concluded there was no material impact specifically from this standard on the financial statements. Next area, we go through and summarize any audit adjustments or uncorrected misstatements. So as Rochelle noted, the audit starts with us receiving unaudited trial balance for all of the city's funds, and then as we're going through and performing testing, if any errors or adjustments are identified, that's a part of the audit process. So audit adjustments are those that were reflected in the financial statements, generally those that are more material in nature. Uncorrected misstatements are those that are deemed clearly immaterial by management, and we conclude that that is reasonable as well. So those are not reflected in the financial statements, and instead they're summarized in this document for informational purposes, so that there were uncorrected misstatements. On page 4, there's a reference to the compliance report that I mentioned, and so this is going to refer to any deficiencies that came up. So I'll skip on that one since we'll go through that in the next item. Consultations with other accountants. This is a topic we just want to make sure we are aware as part of the audit process if other auditors or accountants are consulted for any areas of the financials. The only one that this makes a reference to is that the city does have multiple component units, and if those are audited by other audit firms, which I believe all of them are, then that makes just simply a reference to another auditor involvement. Shared responsibilities for independence. This is included as a reminder of just how important independence is. So, in our profession, before we commence our audits each year, we go through steps on our end to ensure that there are no factors that could impair our independence before we commence. But this is included here just as a reminder that that's intended to be an ongoing dialogue, that if anything were to change with the city, for example, if a new component unit is created, something that can impact the org structure, that those items are just communicated to the auditor timely to allow both parties to make sure nothing about that transaction changes those conclusions. The rest of the document is the management representation letter. This is really the last step of the audit process, several pages, but the two main themes are that the financial statements are accurate to the best of management's knowledge, as well as the information we were provided with in the course of performing our audit and testing. So the next document is the compliance report. So really kind of the why for this document. Entities that expend more than $1 million on an annual basis are subject to a federal grant audit under the uniform guidance. So this document goes through and summarizes the city's federal expenditures for the year, but also houses those letters that I mentioned as far as reports on internal controls. So if you have the document in front of you, what I might suggest you go to is page 11, just because it's a nice one-page recap of really almost all the content in the letter. I'll go ahead and go through each item. So the first couple pages, this is the report on internal controls over financial reporting. So there's a key distinction in an audit. A financial statement auditor is not giving an opinion on internal controls. That's not the purpose of the audit, nor is it in the scope of the audit. However, the standards do require us, if we become aware of anything that rises to the level of a definition of a material weakness or significant deficiency, that is required to be communicated in writing in this report. The definitions of a material weakness and significant deficiency are in that letter. At a high level, a material weakness is defined as a deficiency that was identified such that there is a reasonable possibility that there could be a material misstatement of the financial statements, if not prevented or corrected. Significant deficiency is an item that doesn't arise to the level of a material weakness, but warrants the attention of those charged with governance. So overall, there's 3 categories of deficiencies: that material weakness, significant deficiency, which again are required to be in writing. Third category is control deficiency. The standards allow us to verbally communicate those or put them in writing, et cetera, per the guidance. The next couple of pages go through similar considerations as it relates specifically to the city's single audit, or that federal compliance audit. On pages 7 and 8, as I mentioned, this is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So just so you're aware, the city is required to report each year a detailed summary of really where and who does it get all its federal grant funding from. So you can see here by grant, what are the federal granting agencies that are awarding the city funds? Are they passed through the state? Are they direct? And you can see here in detail what were the 2025 expenditures through each of those grants. Page 10, so one of the requirements, if deficiencies were identified in a prior year audit that rose to that level of a material weakness or significant deficiency, management really provides I'll just say an update a year later and says, do we think we corrected that, partially corrected it, or it remains uncorrected? So page 10, could be a value there to take a look at that and just see what management's update was on the prior year deficiency that was reported, and you can see the updates on that one. Page 11, as I mentioned, is the summary. So this year in the audit, there was one material weakness identified as it relates to the financial statement audit. And then on the federal awards side, there was material weakness and significant deficiency identified, and I'll go through the topics on those. And then you can see each year the auditor goes through and identifies major programs that will be tested. So we do not test 100% of the federal grants. We select certain ones following a risk criteria that the federal government provides. So you can see the 2 grants that were audited this year and tested for compliance were the Airport Improvement Program as well as the Federal Transit Cluster. So on page 12, moving into the deficiencies identified during the audit this year, as I noted, the first one specific to the financial statement side was evaluated as a material weakness. During our testing of one of the city's debt refunding transaction, there was an error in how that transaction was reflected in the financials. So this also aligns in the earlier document that I mentioned, audit adjustments that were identified. This was corrected in the financial statements, but when we have an audit adjustment, the standards require us to go through and evaluate, how did that occur, what caused that, and that goes hand in hand with the deficiency being reported here. The next page moves into the federal award findings, so items that came up in the course of the grant testing. So the first item that was noted was a significant deficiency in the preparation of the CFA. So at a high level, the CFA is intended to mirror the financial statement. So meaning expenditures are reported on the CFA in the year they are incurred and reported in the financial statements. So in going through and auditing the CFA this year, there were items that were expensed in the city's financial statements in 2023 and 2024 that had not been properly reflected in those year's CFAs. So they have been reported on the 2025 CFA. So at the end of the day, they are getting reported to the federal government as having been expended through the grant agreements, but the deficiency relates to they were not in the proper year's CFA. The next deficiency relates to, in the airport major program, the federal government identifies reports that may or may not be required to be submitted each year. In the course of testing, you can see a summary here from context of not all required reports that were identified in the grant agreement were submitted in the time frame also identified in the grant agreement. The last item was a material weakness related to the airport improvement program. The FAA is currently in the midst of performing an investigation around some matters that includes revenue potential, looking into revenue diversion. So this finding here is recapping, acknowledging that investigation is ongoing. Revenue diversion is specifically identified because when we perform our uniform grant guidance, we follow very specific testing areas. So granting agencies may come in for a review. It could include, I'll just say, a laundry list of 40 items. Some of those topics may not be in the scope of what the external auditor looks at as part of the uniform grant guidance, but revenue diversion is one of those areas. So we felt it was appropriate to summarize that in this report because that would qualify as a consideration under there. So you can read the context of the finding as far as articulates, here's the status of this. This is an ongoing matter, but it is out there. Then lastly, in the document, similar to what I mentioned on the summary schedule of prior year findings, the last item in the report is the corrective action plan. So each year, if any findings or deficiencies are identified, management is required to prepare a corrective action plan that goes through and identifies what are the corrective actions that are going to be taken, who is responsible for that, and what is the anticipated completion date. So this format, just so you know, is very clearly laid out. They bullet point the required topics. So again, this is management's response to the current year findings and what the intended corrective action plans are. Overall, I will not be going through the aquifer in great detail unless there are any questions. As Rochelle alluded to, it is a large document, but she hit on just really the key areas. Again, I would also note the unmodified or clean audit opinion that we issued as it related to the financial statements. And I think there's been a summary that's been provided as far as the content included in those. At a high level, there's a balance sheet and income statement for every fund that the city does maintain, along with the footnotes to those financials. I will go ahead and pause there if there's any questions for myself or Rochelle.
Commissioner Sells. Any questions? I guess so. Oh, yeah. So I guess one of my questions is, I've heard this term, clean audit, unmodified opinion.
Yep.
But there are problems, right? And so I guess the question is, how is this a clean audit if we have these material weaknesses and these significant deficiencies?
So the term clean is referring explicitly to the audit opinion we issued on the financial statements. So when you look at the audit opinion issued on the financial statements, we are opining on the financials have been presented materially in accordance with GAAP. So that's what when the clean opinion or unmodified audit opinion is referenced, that's specifically to the opinion we issued on. Are we providing reasonable assurance that the financial statements appear to be presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles? So we can reach that conclusion at the same time deficiencies in a process or compliance findings are identified. There can be deficiencies that come up, but we still, in our testing, we're able to achieve reasonable assurance that there are no material errors in the financial statements themselves.
Let me think about that one for a second.
Okay. So another thing to keep in mind when I read the definition, deficiencies specifically allude to the fact that there could be, if a deficiency does exist, that does open the potential that unidentified errors were a part of the process. But the auditor, following their methodology, has performed the procedures to at least get reasonable assurance. Again, that's the term we use. We don't give absolute assurance on opinions, right? But we give reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially accurate.
But it gives you a metric then for staff to go in and to look at their own processes and controls to figure out, kind of doing the epidemiology of it, to figure out where did we go wrong, and is this a matter of what are the variables that go into play of why we had this? Because I'm looking at, if we're talking about the airport annual report that was identified as a significant deficiency based on reports not being filed timely. So, yes, federal dollars, impact, yes. So to me, it kind of seems like I'm getting into, I'm not asking a question, so let me stop. So that was all. I just want to say there's a way of helping staff identify
where problems could come up
in controls or processes.
Right.
I have quite a few questions. The first is fairly high level. As an independent auditor, is the governing body, are we considered fiduciaries?
The audit process refers to you all as those charged with governance. So that's the terms I would say under auditing standards. That's why even when I mentioned the letter is addressed to those charged with governance, that's going to be, I'm going to say, the term we use under auditing standards of charged with the governance over the body, the financial statements.
Okay. So what would you as an independent auditor expect the oversight of the governing body to be in terms of finance in general?
Well, I mean, I think, in my opinion, you all set the policies as far as like, what do you think you need to look at, right? And I mean, when I just reflect on conversations and experiences I have with different clients, that can look different, right? I mean, I don't sit in on all the meetings you all do, but departments give you readouts and updates, et cetera. And usually the organization is the one defining to what level of detail do you expect that to look like. Like I said, at the end of the audit, though, I mean, there is comments about management's responsibility and responsibility that you all have over those financial statements, but I think it will look different for each group on how they define that as far as how much in the details they're going to get.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, the question, sorry to interrupt, the question I think you asked during the previous presentation, for example, some have committees, some don't, so that answer could look different, right? For organizations that have committees, some don't. So I probably mirror the answer given earlier of some organizations I work with have committees, not uncommon for them to not. So I only bring that up. That could look different, right? If you're having a reliance on something a committee is looking at, or if it's staying with those charged with governance. That could be an example of where that could clearly look different across 5 different entities.
So let me ask a few, we can get back to that, but let me ask a few questions. Are we writing our own financial statements?
You can answer, I can.
So in our practice, we rely on RSM to produce the financial statements based on our data sets.
That's great. I highly recommend that, so good to know. We talked about uncorrected misstatements that are not material this year, but if not corrected in the future, could become material. Mm-hmm. What would your recommendation be in terms of uncorrected misstatements?
So you were probably reading the language. I mean, that is kind of the disclaimer that's given. What I'll say is uncorrected misstatements, in my opinion, fall in 2 categories. Sometimes you truly just find a one-off error. The most common errors we find are what we call cutoff errors. You know, they have a lot of transaction to go through at year end, right? So it's not uncommon in the thousands of transactions, payables that get processed subsequent to year end, if those are all getting evaluated properly, where the expense is properly recognized before December 31st or after. So it's not uncommon for one-offs to get identified. There's also maybe recurring ones. So let's say that if we had a recommendation and that same thing is coming up every year, that's where I would probably evaluate that a little different to how it's defined. Something that is immaterial one year could be a problem in a subsequent year. So if it's been a known uncorrected misstatement multiple years, that is I'll just say the dice you're rolling, right? In the following year, it could become a problem. But like I said, there's also those ones of, I mean, nobody's perfect. I think it's not uncommon for us to find an uncorrected misstatement, and it may not be a recurring issue that's coming up each year, if that helps.
Okay. Yes, thank you. In the documentation that was provided, not you, but it was listed that we could not be considered a low-risk oddity. Can you please explain that?
Yeah, so that term, if you look in the compliance report, you'll see the reference, what that's referring to is on page 11 of the compliance report. That is a term used specific to the federal grant audit. So It's not really subjective. The federal government in the uniform grant guidance that I mentioned, they list out very explicit criteria, examples, and it's really a yes/no checklist, and it takes a look at the previous 2 years. One is, have you completed audits in a timely manner? That is a yes for you all. You've gotten your audits done by September 30th, which is the federal government deadline. One is, have you had a single audit both years? So if you're a municipality that doesn't require a single audit every year, if you haven't had one in the previous 2 years, you're not a low-risk auditee either. So some of them are just questions like that. Other triggers are, have you had a material weakness in either of the last 2 years? If that's a yes, that's a high risk. So to be clear, like I said, I won't go through them all. There's probably 7 to 10 questions. If any of them are a yes, you're a high-risk auditee for until you relieve that previous 2-year period. What that means for the audit is a low-risk auditee, the auditor is required to audit at least 20% of the expenditures on the federal, the list of schedule of expenditures of federal awards. If you're a high-risk auditee, the auditor is required to audit at least 40% of those federal grant dollars. So that's at least what I would describe for us, the direct impact on the distinction between low and high-risk auditee. That also defines how much of your CFA had to be subject to audit this year.
And to follow up on that, so when we're working with RSM to do that, if we're at a high risk now, does that mean it requires us to have more professional service hours with you to be able to audit those programs to the 40% level?
Yeah, it can impact the number of major programs. So just, as I mentioned, we pick major programs. So it is not uncommon that if we're having to achieve 40% coverage versus 20%, we're having to audit more major programs, which does take additional hours, et cetera.
In terms of your process, do you communicate with the elected officials right before you start auditing field work, et cetera? Do you send out questionnaires?
So the standards require the plan, scope, and timing letter that I mentioned. We are required to distribute that to those charged with governance. So that was sent out, as it noted, on April 7th. I will say we facilitate the assistance of management sometime of, can you distribute this on our behalf versus all of us emailing you? We also are required to perform audit inquiries that go through a few areas, such as risk assessment, any potential awareness of fraud, et cetera. So the standards require us to meet with, I'm just going to loosely say, the equivalent of the chair of the committee. So we are not required to interview each individual person, but that letter talks about the availability for that type of conversation. But the standards require us to, at a minimum, have at least met with, again, loosely, the chair of the equivalent of those charged with governance.
Okay. Testing, I had a conversation with you. Mm-hmm. In terms of testing, I asked if we typically or could test wage versus approved budget. And then I also asked about fees that are charged in general to residents, whatever, for whatever service that may be, and if that was required. Did any of that testing occur? And if not, we can go to the next. Did you guys test payroll? It's
yeah, and I'll have
every year.
So payroll, I mean, I know the questions are around, is the increase in the budget match the increase for each employee? Mm-hmm. And there are differences. And like I said, I'll probably tag Rochelle in to talk through that because I'm not involved in the budget process nor council's or commission's acceptance of that. We go through, and as I mentioned earlier, we are not required to test the operating effectiveness of controls. That's when I say we aren't required to, that's operating effectiveness going through and concluding on their performance. In our risk assessment, we go through and look at if certain key controls appear to be designed. Payroll, we take a look at, I mean, the city's process involves supervisor approval of individuals' raises on an annual basis, and we took a look at a sample of proper approvals there. That is going to be different than the piece, I think it's referred to as the step in the budget. So if you want to comment on that part at all, that there are distinctions between what those two look like, because I think part of the question was around a 1% step, and that's not going to align necessarily.
Yeah, so there's the kind of the two pieces she's alluding to. Audit guidance gives
scope and limitations about making sure transactions are properly authorized, that the data is correct. And that happens not across salaries, but she alluded to an actuary, so that also, we call it census testing. It takes employee data and making sure it's accurate, it's been authorized, all the changes were approved, and all that kind of thing. I think where comparing wage to budget is more of a supplement in our budget to actuals, that those costs are displayed there, but we don't have a specified process where we review, especially at an individual employee level, like what actuals were versus what is budgeted for the position and in the scope and purpose of the financial audit.
Okay. I consider the wage increases on a large scope, right? Like your payroll software should be able to, hey, everyone's getting a 2.5% wage adjustment. You should be able to affect that really with one step for the most part. Those are the types. I don't want to get into individual employees, but I mean, that's too much. That's going to be for the city manager, city management staff. But in general, how are we making sure that budget, we say 2.5% wage adjustment hypothetical, 2.5% step, how is that getting approved, right? Are we taking it outside of finance?
So budget and finance are two teams here in the city, and we work very closely together. But as far as implementing the policy decisions that the governing body implements as far as wages would be implemented as part of the operating budget and then put into our HRIS system, which is in the city of Lawrence controlled by the Human Resources Department. And then ultimately the outcome of all of those payrolls and adjustments then again in partnership comes over to the financial statements in finance in the form of very, very large journal entries.
Okay. Because payroll and HR are two separate, they don't interface, right? Like
payroll and finance, payroll currently is housed in HR, not in.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, finance, GL,
Yes.
trial balance, all your things.
One system,
over here.
payroll and benefits administration, other.
So it is a double entry. It is what it is. And then the thing that I also asked about was fees, right? Do we, and this may not be able to be answered right now, does the governing body approve all fees that are charged out to residents, permit issuers? May not be able to answer that now, but that is something that I think we should discuss.
Typically, any fee increases or adjustments come into the elective body for approval, unless it's a prior authorization by the elected body to allow the city manager to adjust the fees according to increases in material or increases in a specific commodity or providing a specific service. But yeah, we actually don't effectuate fees without the authorization of the governing body, always.
Okay. I would be interested in a fee resolution that's approved every year. It's a mother getting it done initially, but it's brilliant when all you're doing every year is just tweaking whatever you need to tweak. And that hopefully makes it easier for staff. That's all I'll ask about that. And then I have one question for Ms. Matthews. I'm a little confused on the debt, and we talk about the third-party software vendor. Do we have somebody entering into our GL, or are we talking about Munis or Tyler?
No, sure, that's a great question. So as we've talked up here before, I think we're on GASB 103, about to be active next year.
Well, yeah.
So any number of year, both from their side from testing and our side from compliance, we have to make sure we're in compliance with these GASBs. And one way we do that for GASB 96 and 97, which are leases and SPEDAs, and then just in general compliance with debt, we have a software called Debt Book. And it's a very specialized tool that does those higher level calculations and keeping inventory and all the different check marks, right, that are required by GASB, where our Tyler ERP can do some of that, like think wide but not deep. And so the city, in order to maintain our compliance with GASB, made an investment in that software. And so as part of that, we did enter into a refunding transaction in 2025 where we were able to affect over $6 million in interest savings by refinancing the debt lower. And as part of preparing that transaction, we as staff input data into that modeling software to help generate the journal entries that then go into the financials. So it is not touching our general ledger. It's us putting our debt information and transaction information in there to develop organized and systematic entries that click all those compliance boxes for all these GASB and GFOA requirements.
Okay. Thank you. That I was intrigued to see that, and I wasn't sure. You mentioned 103. Are you ready?
Ask me in a year, but yeah, I mean, all joking aside, yes. So for those that it might be helpful that don't live in the world of GFOA, GASB 103 is a pretty monumental change coming to local governments and those that produce full annual ACFRs. So it will not only change how I write the management and discussion analysis, which is like my term paper that summarizes like the actual financials themselves, but it will also change the face of the financial statements, especially in those enterprise and business funds.
Yeah, there's like 5 main topics in management's discussion analysis, enterprise funds, I think some budget to actual items. So it's a pretty detailed list of just 5 kind of categories. I'll say they're revisiting and updating.
So we have access to the National Government Finance Officers Association, who are not only very active federally in an advocacy capacity, but they also are a resource for us. They provide trainings. They do an annual GASB update every year that talks about these things, that start helping giving us tools and white papers and different things to help cities start doing what they need to do to be in compliance with GASB. Above and beyond, GASB makes their pronouncement or their rule, and they also give you an implementation guide to help ensure compliance. So
yeah,
it's a lot.
This is probably like GASB 34 when it went into.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, well, then I would like to talk high level, overall, and I appreciate everything that you guys have done. I asked for a review of what our audits and compliance looked like going back, and I got through 2019. And I bring this to the forefront because there is a trend here. And in 2019, we had one significant deficiency and 4 material weaknesses. 2020, we had 1 material weakness. 21 and 22, we did not have any findings. Then we had 4 material weaknesses in 23 and a significant deficiency in 24. Now 2 material weaknesses and 2 significant deficiencies. I will say, seeing that pattern 2019 to 25, I found it really odd that we had nothing in 21 and 22, and it turns out we did. It just wasn't caught until 23. All of this to say, and I can read it, city did not properly record temporary notes payable, cash, and capital assets within the correct funds in fiscal years 21 and 22, which resulted in a finding in 23. So I am not doing this. You were not here that entire time. What I do see is a pattern. We're not going in the right direction, right? This is my world. I've had findings. Significant deficiencies really ultimately don't scare me that much. Material weaknesses do. and we've had a lot of them. And one, let me note that there's a lot that this finance department has to deal with. We've had a lot of debt issuances. Debt can be difficult. We have a lot of capital projects. We have incentives that we've provided. There's a lot going on. We've also, for funsies, throw in a major software conversion in there in '23, which is horrible. My question is, Ms. Matthews, having inherited some of this stuff, and then having some of it go, having these deficiencies and weaknesses under your purview, do you have any idea? Are there one or two fixes here? I'm not bringing this up to beat anybody up in any way, but to have consistent findings for this long is kind of surprising to me. And for me, all I care about is getting it fixed. That's it. So do we have software? Do we have software issues?
I think there's some context that would be helpful. And so, yes, like when we're looking at those number and types of things and categorizing them, but I think context is helpful. Myself and my predecessor has stood here before in that 2018, 2019, 2020 era, we knew that we had significant area for improvement, right? And we brought that to the commission as a Team Lawrence, and you guys invested in us to upgrade an ERP system. So those findings that we had in those previous years, I think it's important to note that they're not repeat findings. Like she previously discussed, that every year, not only am I accountable for the current years, but I have to document progress for the prior years. And so in this time frame, we have been able to develop corrective action plans, additional internal controls, staffing resources, whatever the individual solution may be. So we are correcting those and not repeating those. But I think the overall trend is reflective of just as a city that's growing, becoming more complex, as you noticed, more transactions, staff turnover, not only in our finance department, but in our business partner departments. And that is an area where we're actively looking at enhancing collaboration, enhancing training, putting additional internal controls, because we can't mitigate every risk. We can't perfect every transaction, but we can put processes in place to make sure that we're doing the appropriate business reviews. If there's a place where there's a known risk, then that is where, based on guidance from the auditor, from the audit best practices, our professional organizations, then we implement corrective action plans and enhanced internal controls.
Well, in terms of not making the same errors, you're correct when you get down into the weeds, but I am seeing some patterns overarching. Timing, not like the entries, revenues have been a sticking point. Timing of entries, not, a lot of this, we need to build systems in local government that are, that can sustain through turnover, right? Succession planning. I will say finance is probably one of the harder areas to successfully succession plan. With you have turnover, it can really cause a ruffle. But again, I guess, do you need what do you need? Because I don't want to see even a significant deficiency next year. So I think it's really important that, if you've got issues with the software, maybe the conversion, which you weren't here for, maybe the conversion didn't go great. Maybe we had some errors that need to be fixed, but when you are white knuckling it and just getting through the days, going back and rectifying those errors can be very difficult to do. I guess ultimately what I'm asking is, what resources do you need because we've got to get it fixed, right? We're not here to, we have no choice but to get it fixed. We're not here to beat anybody up. We have AGH next year. They're a bundle of fun. So, I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
Yeah, and let me take that. I think Ms. Matthews and her team has done a fantastic job, but absent some of the procedures and standardization of workflows, I think we need to look at those and see which ones are not consistent with our work. Take the airport, for example. We just hired an airport manager. That's a huge help for us, because before that, and 2 of the audits, I believe, or 3 of the audits are the findings of the audit.
3 of the findings, yeah.
3 of the findings are airport related. Not that the airport staff is not doing the job, right? But, with the turnover of staff and absent a documented rules and procedures, and obviously with having a consultant and the process to the feds and the reporting to the feds, those are all some of the things that we need to learn from and create those procedures that we don't fall into those challenges again. And so that's one of the things that we have. I would tell you from my past experiences with the diverse funds, with the diverse functions that we have in the cities, having 1 or 2 or 3 is not a bad thing. However, we need to not fall into those same issues again, even without even going into in-depth at those items. So you're right. I think having a clear, unmodified audit would be amazing for us to do, and we're going to work on that. We're going to make sure that we have the processes and the procedures of that. And I know Ms. Matthews is very committed to that, because we've talked about it in the past 2 weeks. And I know the executive team is committed to do that. One thing I want to mention, it's not on Ms. Matthews. It's on every single department, because Ms. Matthews is taking, and the finance department is taking all of that information that the departments do and puts it together. And it's a challenge sometimes that we don't have. One of the tasks that I would say is for us to make sure that we don't have silos, and that finance is talking to the different departments that touch on our financial model, right? And so those are some of the controls that we're going to work on.
To Commissioner Polling's point, though, so is that something that you guys need resources from us to say, hey, we need some type of contractor to help to be able to do that? Like, what would we need to do to make some of that happen? Or is that just...
No, I don't believe so. I mean, if we create those procedures, it's for us to look at those, what has been implemented and where the little gaps are, and we need to plug those gaps. Those 4 items that are actually, I have a memo that Ms. Matthews and her team prepared, and it goes back to 2018 with some of the challenges that we have, and also with the 2025 and how we fix that. And we have a deadline for it to fix it before the end of December of 2026. Now, our task is to make sure while we're taking care of those 4 items that we don't fall into future items that could cause us not having a clean, unmodified audit. I don't want to say resources, because I haven't dug deep enough in this to say, well, we'll need resources. But I think we have the capable, again, incredibly capable finance director that we have. We have a very strong city manager's office team, and her team, and we've committed to working together over the next few weeks and months to make sure that we have opportunities.
So I think, if I could summarize, that the corrective action plan as outlined in your compliance report is what I need. And I think then the conversation would extend as part of developing those processes and procedures, then that would dictate future resources, changing in procedure and that kind of thing. But we need to work through our plan with the commitment and assistance of all our cooperating departments who are all on board to work on mitigate this. And to the city manager's point, then to also continue all the other internal controls that we do on all the other processes to work towards that no findings style of compliance report.
So ultimately, talking about charged with governance, fiduciary, whatever, however we want to name it, I'm very interested in being able to know, at least on a quarterly basis, how we're doing, right? Instead of every year ending it with significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. And again, if all we had was significant deficiencies, this wouldn't be the conversation. We know that the material weaknesses are a significant problem. So how this goes to Madam Auditor, what would you recommend for us? Do you have any recommendations? You're not telling us what to do, obviously, trying to maintain that independence, but hypothetically speaking, what would you recommend to governing bodies to ensure that we're not getting just 1 year, bam, here's where we are, right?
The first thing I'd start with is what they both referenced as far as the corrective action plan. Here were the matters that came up in this year's audit. They have developed a plan. It's not uncommon to show the end of the next fiscal year as the anticipated completion date. That's very common. But I think I would echo what Rochelle just said as far as we have a plan, so this doesn't happen again when the audit does come up again next year. And having a dialogue on before the auditors show up and start looking at it, have we done a self-check, right? Sometimes in our planning meetings, we go through and say, these came up. Have you all had a chance to revisit them before you start closing the books, before you start handing us the trial balance on some of those one-offs? Like I'll just point to the debt refunding transaction. That's probably, in my opinion, a little hard to do a tick, tick, tick every month on that. That was a one-time transaction. But if there's a debt refunding this year, next year, et cetera, that's on the radar to watch for the error that did occur for that particular transaction the next time that transaction occurs. To the earlier comment, I think whatever cadence they come up with to kind of do checkpoints, I think a lot of us do that on project management as far as when do I expect to give an update to the next group. I think that'll be an internal decision if it is something we checked this before we close the trial balance, et cetera, if that's something that's a discussion with you all or internally among the departments.
So you don't have, I'm talking about governing body,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
On a normal, recurring schedule, income statements, budget to actual, warrant advices, check numbers, you don't have any recommendations
As far as
what
you all are
oversight,
looking at?
as far as what we are reviewing every month.
So,
Off the top of my head, I guess my experience is usually the department heads are handling that as far as, I say that I don't attend every month's meetings to know what you all already ask your departments to go through. A lot of entities go through and look at, here's all the checks we cut. Some entities find that way too cumbersome to go through what was every single payment we made. So I see a lot of differences across entities. Again, I'll go back to my earlier comment, what level of detail they think is needed at your level versus their level. I think there's a lot of examples out there. If you're looking for guidance on what should we look at specific to the financials, I think there's probably a lot of information on, again, if there's something you want to dig into, what would be the appropriate recap for departments to give you on that topic. Exactly, vehicle, what that summary would look like. I think it's just going to depend on probably what's the
Policy guidance.
policy guidance. Maybe, so often these are triggered by I'll just say the hot topic currently being evaluated in the city. That's probably the meaningful summary for that particular month, et cetera.
If I may, I think quarterly reports, I know we provide quarterly reports. Usually it's probably lagging. I think a timely quarterly report of actuals to proposed is one aspect of it, and we can certainly, if there's a specific interest in a fund, we can give more details. I've worked in places where you do the 3+9, 6+6, 9+3, and end of the year. I've worked in places where you do a monthly report. I think we need to gauge that with our finance team to see their ability to be able to produce those, because those are very, very elaborate reports, and they would hit the major funds. And that's something that we can work on. Again, with the ideas, I don't want to bombard everyone with too many ideas, because then there would be, scope creep on the work that they need to do, and there will be exhaustion. So I want to make sure that we have that ability.
And I do think it's important to note, as you well know, many of the transactions we do as part of full modified accrual audited financials occur at year end. And so there could be updates during the given year, but then some of these larger, like we don't have an actuary on call to do that on a monthly basis. We do it on an annual basis.
Yeah,
So,
But the never accrual, yes.
But then it's acknowledging that the monthly reports are produced on more of a cash basis presentation, even though we audit on full modified accrual, then those are two different tools answering two different questions.
Well, we're getting cash now. And as I've always said, I don't know any city that's failed fiscally that was reviewing cash. So we are doing that. So that's outstanding. I am looking forward to other opportunities, which is why I continue to ask, do you have issues with the software? Again, a conversion can be real nasty, and it's hard to go back and correct things. So if we identify that as being an issue, again, for sake of just getting it fixed and giving you a chance for success, then we can have that conversation. And I've had to do that.
Sure.
In my past life. And it's hard to go back while you're still, again, white knuckling it currently, trying to get everything done. Last question I have debt book, is that handling all of our incentives, our Eco-Devo incentives? So how are we handling TIFs, IRBs, CIDs?
No, DebtBook is specifically calibrated as a GASB compliant software, so it's just leases, SPIDAs, and the city's debt. It does not house any of our economic incentives. That's not the purpose for which it was built.
There could be opportunity of having somebody manage our Eco-Devo incentives, something to consider. I had one down in Texas.
Absolutely.
Because it is it's so comprehensive and could have significant effect. So in those cases, I am always a fan of throwing a TPA in there.
So
Set it and forget it.
So that's the advantage of hiring, and you just did that, of hiring a municipal advisor. I've been able to use a municipal advisor to look at the economic development incentives packages, do pro formas, expenditures, return on investment scenarios, all of that stuff. So
Tracking them.
Absolutely. That's the ability for us to work with the municipal advisor. And the beauty about the municipal advisor services is are a la carte, to my understanding. So that's really helpful for us to be able to even gauge them on different projects that we have, including some of the ones that are happening right now.
And important to note that we specifically included in the scope, tracking economic incentives is no longer a option. It is required by the state of Kansas, where we are to file certain reports, and we specifically scoped our advisory contract for assistance with that. As you noted, complexity, scale, size, volume, all of those things have an impact on city resources. And so being able to have, I can't quote the House bill off the top of my head, but there is now active legislation that requires us to do, I believe, reporting so many days after an incentive is approved, and then on an annual ongoing basis. And the state state will combine all of that data and we'll make it publicly available.
Okay. I look forward to no findings next year. Thank you. And please let us know beforehand if you need something. I get it. It is arduous at best. So I want us to be on a great track moving forward.
Michelle, I have a quick question. Sure. And I want to take Commissioner Poline's point and kind of get it to you directly. Is there something that we haven't been able to give you that you've needed?
Not at this time.
Thank you.
And I actually want to take that one step further, too. Do you work with the software company? Do they do yearly health checks as part of like the subscription service that we have for them? Can we engage them to be able to help some of this as part of the package that we buy?
So I think that answer is going to vary based on which software we're talking about. Debt book, like that part of our correction action plan, I can tell you today is completed. We have not only worked with the back-end tech support to correct the coding issue that caused the error, we have met with our account manager and put extra internal controls in place. Not only will my staff perform an independent calculation, but our account manager, we will send, if we were to have that type of transaction, we will send that through their review side and their quality control side to do an additional check. So yes, we have, that is available to us under our current package of that level of support. When you're talking something more comprehensive, like Tyler, our big ERP system, we do updates and compliance and quarterly, if not more often, because trying to cram that much of an update in an annual software update, we would all be crying. And some of them are urgent fixes, like changes to the tax code and various other things that we regularly update, where we cross over with our efficient and effective processes team members in IT, where we share responsibility for making sure the software is updated, safe and secure, and then we test to make sure that it's performing the actions as we expect. That occurs on a regular basis.
And those ones are most of these products SaaS products, so they're being managed in the cloud. Someone
Yes.
does an upgrade. Okay, gotcha. I have one more question, but it's going to ask Melissa, Ms. Sieben, a question about this. Not like specifically about some of the stuff on the airport, but could you talk to the city manager's point about what having a airport manager has provided us as a city? What does that hopefully help you do? I mean, you've come up here before as the acting airport manager, so hopefully we've been able to offload that from you. But could you just talk about how that's helping MSO manage the airport?
Absolutely, and my apologies because I feel horrible about the fact that we had these before you tonight. And honestly, our team is diligently working on trying to figure out exactly the processes we need to have to mitigate these on the go forward. And anyway, I want to apologize about that. What I will say is, to your question about our new general manager over our airport, is his job is to help us run the day-to-day operations of the airport. What you have seen over the last number of years here, starting around 2020, was us having someone who is part-time doing stuff with the airport and also doing right-of-way acquisition for the city. That individual retired last summer. I had to step in to do that work, along with also one of our fiscal agents within MSO that works directly with this team sitting here. So what that does is takes that burden of day-to-day operations back off us and allows someone who's, AAA certified to be able to handle those operations, instead of me, who's been trained a little bit and doesn't have all the in-depth knowledge and interaction. I will say, from a safety perspective, from keeping ourselves leased up, we were doing a lot, but we could not do it all. And having a full FTE is just the tip of the iceberg of what we will actually need out there to run an efficient, effective operation. But it's a start, and it is your first ever full-time dedicated employee at the airport.
And I would add familiarity with the FAA rulings, with the procedures, with the processes is huge. And knowing the intricacies of what the question is and how to handle it. I think just the past week, he was able to pull a couple of leases that have been lingering for a while.
We actually, the work had started prior, working with our legal folks and our administration, but again, he's dedicated. So instead of me trying to fit these things in and amongst my other duties as assigned, he's been able to go out there and work with those. And, it's a quick question with me, a quick, conversation with someone else, and he's off to the races. And so that's just been, for me, it's an immense burden off my shoulders. And for you, it should give you confidence that we have that area functioning well from an aviation side. And I will tell you, my team is highly dedicated on the fiscal side. We did have some transition. I will tell you, my staffing has been completely turned over in my administrative side in the last year and a half. And so that lended itself to a little bit more of a challenge, but we've got the right team in place. I'm confident moving forward. And if Sean keeps doing what he's doing with the airport, we should start seeing better revenue generation out there. So.
I'm going to say this, and we had a lack of oversight. Whatever the reasoning may be, justifiable or not, we had a lack of oversight. How will that change moving forward in the city manager's office?
I think you've taken care of the first step, which is hiring a general manager for the airport. With all of the expectations and the intricacies. You will actually, in 2 weeks, you will see a whole presentation on the airport, the state of the airport, which would include the the fixed, the
FBO.
the fixed
operator?
yeah, building operator, and so. It's a huge deal. Again, putting things in order is really important for that, and that was the first step. Melissa and team is working very diligently. Not only because we have the FBO, but we have also other leases, and we have land that we frankly, we really need to master plan for a major economic development project. And then we have KU endowment, right? And we have that partnership with them to really look at a more comprehensive, hopefully partnership, public-private partnerships in this. So you have a lot of moving parts that it was imperative to get someone who was at the helm of that airport, which is the gentleman, Sean. And so that's the beginning. Involvement with the city manager's office. I have a keen interest in this. One of my departments many years ago was the Dallas Love Field. So, I know the importance of having a facility like an airport and the importance of that. And frankly, for future economic development, having a stabilized airport would bring in a lot of opportunity from corporations, from mid-sized businesses, all of those. And so we're on it.
Okay.
No, completely agree with that. I mean, we're going to be the closest airport to the Chief Stadium. It's going to be a 25-minute drive, quicker than MCI, quicker than the Executive Airport, quicker than anything down in Olathe. I'm looking forward to that here in the near future. Before we open up to public comment, I guess, Commissioner Dever, I know that you've had questions about the airport. Anything that you'd like to ask?
I think I got a lot of answers, but I do have a question about the internal control and item A related to the debt, the $7.7 million debt reallocation. I guess I want to understand clearly and succinctly what the negative financial benefit, or excuse me, what the negative financial impact is to the city, not only from a budgetary standpoint, but from the actual final statement for the city for 2025.
Just to clarify, so the 7 million, that was the amount of the audit adjustment, and the audit adjustment has been reflected in the financial statements. So the end product includes that correcting entry. So maybe I need to.
Okay, great. Yeah, I want to make sure that I didn't see any correlation directly stating that that was completed, and I wanted to make sure I understood for myself. And then I think when you make those statements and summarize it, I want to make sure that the actual statement regarding the impact to the statement and the direct positive or negative benefit to the actual cash flow.
Okay, yeah, and just to clarify, I mean, if you were looking at the finding, I mean, like in that effect paragraph, for example, it explicitly says there was a material adjusting journal entry that was recorded during the audit process to correct this error. So, apology if there's any uncertainty, but that adjustment was incorporated into the final audit product.
Okay, so $7.7 million. So I guess I'm trying to understand the actual transaction that failed to carry over, and the debt itself not being, I guess we refinanced and then we didn't properly carry over that refinance. I guess that was what I wasn't understanding.
Yeah, so the entry, and definitely Rochelle jump it. So when you do a refunding, you're taking off the refunded debt off the financial statements, right? And you're adding the proceeds from the new debt. I'll try and not get too much into the accounting details, but for like economic and savings reasons, those are not going to be dollar for dollar, right? The proceeds you get from the new debt, primarily because of the premium, the unamortized premium associated with the refunding debt, there is a difference. And that difference, when the entry is recorded, is known as a deferred gain or loss on the transaction. The error out of debt books was the premium that was being removed off the financials was coming up with an incorrect amount. So that was resulting in the original deferred gain on the transaction being wrong by that amount. So the entry corrected those items. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah, so you just made like a journal entry for this? I'm trying to understand. Okay.
Yeah, so before the correcting entry, I'll say the deferred gain on the transaction was calculated by an amount incorrect, and the premium was way understated, so those leveled out. So it was really a balance sheet only entry between the liabilities for the premium and the deferred inflows, but that was corrected with the entry management recorded.
Okay, great. And then secondarily, how common of a deficiency is this? Is this something that rarely occurs, commonly occurs? Is this something that you've seen before?
Yes, I mean, it probably goes back to the comment made earlier. I think it's fair to say part of the contributing cause was the city had not done a debt refunding transaction in a while, right? So you've got things that we all do every day in our daily routine, maybe something you haven't done in a few, I can't remember what the last time was. So for perspective, it had been, Rochelle and I talked about, 8 years since the city had recorded a debt refunding transaction. So if that provides a little perspective, I mean, just the exercise of walking through that journal entry, the finance department hadn't even had to do that for 8 years. So do I see errors in the proper recording of a debt refunding transaction? Yes, I've seen that before. There's disclosures that go along with that. Sometimes corrections and adjustments are needed there. So I have seen errors in the recording of a debt refunding before.
Oh yeah, that's very helpful. I'd like to have that background because, again, these transactions that don't occur frequently, I can understand something a little bit more than something that we do routinely or annually. So thank you.
And just for me, just to double check, it's not like we lost $7 million. It's that, there's an entry and then it changed. It was a journal entry that got updated. Sort of.
This was not a cash issue. I mean, I guess, yes, it didn't impact cash. Cash wasn't off. Nothing with the payments that were made on the debt. I mean, this was an accounting entry as far as properly removing the carrying value of that debt and then the related gain or loss on the transaction itself.
Gotcha. Just double.
Yeah, and I think that's what I wanted to underscore here because, a journal entry is one thing. Tangible loss or gain of $7.7 million without an actual understanding of where it came from is a whole other issue.
Any other further questions from the commissioners before we open it up for public comment? Thank you so much. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a good evening. Appreciate
Yep,
it.
thanks. Any public comment from anybody in the room?
A positive comment. This is a lot of numbers, but we understand that audits identify risks, improve internal controls, and ensure compliance with laws and standards. And we know that analytic reviews are not to be seen as criticisms. There's every reason to believe that clearer practices and procedures and workflows could improve the Commission's decision-making process and more clearly show the community how our local taxes are being used throughout Lawrence. Recently, citizens have encouraged clearer practices for tracking project outcomes, including debts, approvals, bond issuances, budgets, and implementation progress. To reduce the likelihood of the historical and recent errors that have been talked about, the Coalition for Collaborative Governments appreciates and supports implementation of Commissioner Polian's Lawrence Stewardship Initiative proposal. The initiative provides a path forward for identifying better processes to manage the physical and financial resources of our community, and we look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy Swain, 66047. I'm going to read a few items from Holly Krebs' column in the Lawrence Times dated May 2, 2026. City of Lawrence is increasing employee pay at unsustainable levels. I'm going to begin with the end in mind and just read the conclusion at the very end and then work back to it. It says, in 2024, the city approved a 2.5% raise for all employees. But 89 of the city's top paid non-union employees received substantially greater raises of 6 to 13% or even more.
Randy, this is one about the audit. Is there something?
I'm sorry?
This is about the audit. Do you have something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We're getting there?
Because Christine asked a question about 2.5% raises and was it audited? And so what I see is that then in 25, the commission approved a 1% raise, but 75% of the top paid employees received 6% plus raises. So you're asking about the audit, and do they look at each individual employee's salary, or do they just look at a percentage? And I'm in agreement that you just look at a percentage. You don't need to get into the weeds. But if a 2.5% raise is approved, and a very large number of people get 6 to 13% raises, and then a 1% is approved, who goes back and checks? If the city commission, does the city commission really think that people are going to get a 2.5% raise? And then does anyone ever tell them that the raises are significantly more than that? And if they are, was it authorized? That's the question I would like to have answered. That's it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Jody Norcross, 66046. I want to start by saying, if we've had in the past 5 years these deficiencies and stuff and nothing's getting changed, doesn't seem that any of the commissioners have looked into this to find out why. Look at numbers. It seemed to me that commissioners should be looking into this, whether it's a 1 time or 5 times that this has taken place. This shouldn't be happening under the commissioner's watch. I'm hoping that moving forward, maybe we ought to do like a forensic audit on all capital projects. That way we can clear things up, get things in line. I'm hoping the city manager, hope the commissioners consider this. I think your name's Rachel, mentioned something about employee turnover. I worked for sanitation department for 34 years, almost 34 years. In the last 5 years, there's been so much management harassment in all the departments. I thought it was just in sanitation. It wasn't. From what I hear, it's in all departments. She left, so if there's a specific person that would start listening to the employees and do something about the harassment. And I've talked to the new city manager about the harassment in the departments. You wouldn't have the turnover that you have because you guys are losing a lot of money with the turnover. You buy uniforms, you buy shoes, you train. Training is a lot of loss of money. So if we look at not just the deficiencies we have in this audit we have, if we look at it citywide, you're going to find a lot of money, wasteful spending, and you're going to find a lot of problems. So I think we need to do a citywide audit on top of these capital projects.
Christina McKenna, 66046. The city audit identified 2 material weaknesses and 2 significant deficiencies. The most substantial findings the city has received in several years. For more than a year, our coalition has examined the city's public records and discovered substantial discrepancies between budgeted and actual figures for debt issued, debt service payments, and capital expenses. The audit examined internal documentation and found different discrepancies. These parallel findings suggest the problems are real and might be more widespread, which could be undermining the Commission's ability to make well-informed financial decisions. This is especially significant because between 23 and the end of this year, the city will issue approximately $540 million in debt, averaging about $135 million per year, more than double the $56 million annual average from the previous 3 years. This total includes repeatedly reissued one-year temporary notes, but we cannot assess the true scope of these obligations because the public documentation does not distinguish refinanced debt from new permanent financing. At the very moment the city's financial operations have become most complex, the audit indicates that some internal controls have become less reliable. This year illustrates the discrepancies we found. The most recent CIP approved $84 million in general obligation debt. The Finance Department's Q&A document anticipated $129 million. Yet in March, the Commission authorized $184 million, $100 million more than the CIP approved. Then the April issuance came in $12 million less than what the Commission authorized. 4 documents, 4 different figures, and no transparent reconciliation. Budgeted debt service payments and capital expenses also vastly differ from their audited actuals. In 21, actual debt service payments were $34 million more than budgeted, whereas in other years they were tens of millions less. The city reports capital expenses as cash flows for 2 years, then when the budget is audited 2 years later, reports these expenses as capitalized assets instead of cash spent. This means they cannot be compared to the original budget. For example, the 24 adopted budget and actual show a $95 million difference in capital expenses. Because audits examine only a sample, the compliance report cautions that other weaknesses may exist. The city must look beyond the audit sample to determine whether these findings are isolated or systemic. Our coalition strongly supports Commissioner Polian's recommendation for a review of 15 sample capital projects. This analysis could provide clear direction for the city to improve its practices and better fulfill its sound fiscal stewardship commitment to transparent, easy access to relevant, accurate data for budgeting and decision-making. By welcoming this feedback and improving documentation, the city can honor its commitment to the sustainable management of resources that our community expects. And I'm glad to hear that there are already some plans in the works for that, so thank you.
Anyone else in the room?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners, and welcome to our new City Manager, Majed, and thank you for jumping in head first here. Forgive me, I don't want to kick anyone while they're down by any means, so if you'll just bear with me while I get to my point. I want to acknowledge, I do think having a new municipal advisor is a great step in the right direction, but respectfully, looking at this report, I'm personally really disappointed that we're still having these issues, especially when we've had a lot of material weaknesses come up several times in the previous 7 years. 2 significant deficiencies, and 2 material weaknesses. I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that it's just not acceptable. Our vision is, in part, to be, quote, innovative, equitable, and transparent government. And these issues simply don't line up with our commitments to sound fiscal stewardship either. Again, I don't want to harp on anyone, but my point is that in addition to addressing these issues, I think these findings show that there really is a need for the stewardship program that Commissioner Polian has been working on. I think greater safeguards and transparency in some of our larger projects are much, much needed and would be really helpful for the public to be able to see those audits also being done. So in the coming months, as the stewardship program is being discussed further, I strongly urge you all and our new city manager to please consider this program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Melvin Hurlbrink, 66047. I support an audit to a certain extent. I spent 20 plus years in the county, so I know government as it stands. I know how it operates. I know how things work. I will say this, we did a lot of independent surveys, studies, all this stuff that cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And I don't want to see us go down that rabbit hole again when I think a lot of the problems here can be done in-house with a little bit of accountability. I see a lot of it being that, you know, when there's a shortfall in government, there's you know, a few solutions or problems. One is just downright incompetence. One's corruption. The other could be mismanagement. The other could be just downright, you know, what I call unforeseen problems. But until somebody steps up, and I hope the new city manager does this, I hope I'm hopeful, and I hope you guys do this too, hold people accountable, because if you don't, you know, my taxpayer dollars are going to, I see it all the time, going for this, that, and this, and that, everything that doesn't solve any problems. You know, we're spending money at the rate that we can't even, I mean, in the last year and a half, my house payments went up $300 a month. $300. And that's taxes. That's not sustainable for me anymore in this county, in this town. I'm a lifelong resident of this city, and I think that the people in these departments need to be held more accountable. And I think you guys ought to start making them be accountable. And I think, you know, the new city manager, I hope he steps up and I hope he makes his people accountable for their problems and what they're spending money on. Because, you know, we need to spend the money on certain things, the airport, everything. I see that. I understand that. There's unforeseen things that got to have money spent on. But I tell you what, I don't knock it, you know, to a whole point. But when I sit there and drive down Mass Street and I see all these new art things and all this stuff going up, yeah, that's beautiful. But man, we've got other problems out there besides that stuff. So I hope that, you know, I hope it's, if you're going to do an audit, I would rather make it everybody in-house be accountable. I don't want to see us spend millions of dollars on an outside audit. I've seen the county do that for 20 plus years and it ended up going nowhere. So I hope we spend our money wisely, the taxpayers' money wisely, and I just want to see everybody be accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Anyone in the back? Dominic, you coming in? You going to comment? No. Okay.
Well, we'd be sad.
Dominic 66049, I don't understand budget, I don't understand finance, but I was listening. I think it is interesting that I see some, I don't know, I keep thinking about the elections because the primaries at least, and we're in election season, and so I see a lot of like the political rhetoric come into these discussions, and I am noticing that my fellow constituents are very upset about taxes, and I know America, we hate taxes and all the yada, 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 but it is interesting I guess my understanding and my comment is that I feel like my fellow citizens have a lot of entitlement when it comes to taxpayer money, and I think it would be interesting for us all to remember that there are people that are not represented in these conversations that also have equal parts of taxpayer money. I'm one of the, I mean, I'm represented because I'm here talking, but like my taxpayer money also goes to this. I think it's important for us to be sound stewards, or whatever phrase you want to call it, of our finances, but then also at the same time, I don't know enough technicality to know how deep in we are in actual trouble and what just needs to be redirected. What I heard from the new manager is that, you know, perhaps we just need to start get policy into place. Maybe we need to have better direction. I hesitate to have, like, in our general political climate, everybody is incentivized to be very angry at everybody right now, and I understand. Trust me, I understand. But I do wonder how much is exaggerated on our issues, and how much is something that is translatable to the public too as well. Like, I understand Commissioner Polian has his expertise in this, but is it being translated to people correctly? Like, I don't know what a material deficit or whatever, the terms, I don't know how severe these are. I don't work in this world. I have no interest in ever getting in this world. But what is the translation, right? What are the real impacts? Because when I understand as a citizen who's lay, who doesn't know any of this, it can sound scary, but I don't know if it is actually scary. Can it be corrected? Is it easily corrected? Is it something that just happened because our world is blowing up and there's a lot of stuff outside our control as a municipality? Perhaps. That's my comment. I don't have anything else. I was not prepared for this.
Thank you. I guess, Sherry, any comments online?
Yes. Julie Jones?
It's on mute. It's always once a month, Julie.
It looks like she's unmuted, but
So why don't we do this? Why don't we go to the next person, Julie, then we'll come back and see if we get it working.
Risa Williams?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
I was just gonna say, I don't know what's up with the audio in, like, on the Zoom, but it's like super echoey and hard to understand, so I don't know. Sorry, I'm having a moment. Forensic audit, I 100% agree. I think there's a lot of stuff going on that is greed-driven. I don't want to point fingers, but I think some of the commissioners know what I'm talking about, hopefully. Kind of literally echoing what Dominique said. But yeah, thank you guys for your time. That's all I got. Sorry. Bye.
Thanks. Yes, we can try Julie one more time.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
We'll give it a shot. Julie Jones?
Can you try talking? That looks unmute. Yeah. Well, we'll catch you next week, Julie. It's all good.
That's all the comments, Mayor.
Okay, excellent.
Vice Mayor, sorry.
Yep, no problem. And so that concludes any further comments before we close the work session from any of the commissioners?
Just a couple of quick ones. I think it goes, protocol being established. Thank you to RSM staff for putting these together. I know that this is work that we always, it comes to us and it's kind of like drinking out of a hydrant. And so I do appreciate these presentations. I think year after year, it's helped kind of grow my understanding of municipal finance. It's a little bit, has its nuances from government finance. So I will say that. One of the things I was looking at, because I remember when I ran in 2021, I was just like, I want to be able to understand our internal controls, our internal finance controls, because, that was something that came out that at the time the commission was very forward about and saying, we need to address these. There's so many opportunities for us. We have antiquated systems. We need to look at our administrative policies, make sure they align with our administrative processes to make sure we have the policies in place to do that. We had some staff attrition, all the things that came up as to what could be factors to where you may see material weaknesses in the audit. So it talks about that. If you have a growing community, growing up, kind of sizing up, standing up different processes, implementing new accounting standards, staff shortages, governments or municipalities experiencing finance department turnover. So we talked about all that to be said. And I don't see a pattern. And I think the pattern, as far as audits, what the pattern I do see, and the pattern that I have seen since I've been on the commission, is the commitment of the city manager's office, our department heads, and this commission to be accountable to our department heads and to our finance and budgeting about what is interpreted in the audit and how do we address those material weaknesses, and giving the work back to the department heads to say, look at your systems. Because that is an administrative piece, and I'll keep saying it to the piece. I think a way for us to prevent that creep is to give staff the authority, knowing that it comes back to us to do the work. And so when I ask the question, is there something we're not giving you? Then I want staff to be able to say that. And I hope staff does understand that they have the authority to say that. Because I don't want this governing body to be your stopgap that's preventing you from having those efficient and effective processes. So I want to make sure that we reiterate that. And I think it goes without saying that this governing body is here to provide those things for you. And if you haven't been able to, then I would imagine by now you've had an environment that would be able to tell you that. And I think I've had those conversations with several department heads to know that I don't think that is a barrier. So I kind of leave at that. One of the things, because I've kind of, I've been gnawing at where do we kind of come together as far as what do we want to see as far as our CIP, our budgeting, debt services, so on and so forth, moving forward. What responsibility of that falls on us, what responsibility of that falls on departments, and what responsibility falls on our city manager. And so going back, I think I've been kind of pulling some things a little bit out of Commissioner Polian's proposal to kind of understand, I think what I'm hearing, at least from the commission, the governing body, is that there is a desire and a purpose to ensure that we, that our capital resources and our debt proceeds they're being done stewardly, they're being done correctly. I think that's a given. We all can agree upon that. I think we also have an opportunity to improve commissioners' visibility. I'm not using the word transparency. I think that's become a political dog whistle. So I'm removing, as I say, visibility into kind of the life cycle of our capital projects and related financing practices. I think that's something we can all agree. Some of us may need to know more about it. Some of us have different learning curves. And then also, I feel like I've heard from this governing body that there is a desire to kind of identify opportunities to not only strengthen our governing processes, that accountability piece and some of those internal controls. So I felt like we've got consensus on all of that. I think now that we have that, it's like, what does that look like? What does that charge look like? And so I think it kind of goes back, I shared that before, that, there's an understanding of us, we don't know all of the administrative processes. It's not in our purview to know that. We back the policy behind ensuring that those processes are efficient and effective. And so then the question becomes, what is it that we want to see? What is it that we're giving the charge to staff as well as to our city manager to help us interpret those purposes? What does that look like? And so I think there are aspects of Commissioner Polian's proposal that kind of fits that. Some of it doesn't. We can't poo-poo an audit saying that it only uses a sample, but then we say we want a proposal that looks at a sample. You just contradicted yourself. So is this a comprehensive or is it not? Are we focused on proposals, processes, or are we just wanting staff to find a solution to the problem that we think we have? And so that's why I believe it's important around this very topic that we are very clear and concise in what it is that we're wanting to accomplish, and not to come at it from the perspective of deficiency or weakness. And that there's an opportunity for us to allow our city manager to become more aware, to bring his level of knowledge up on our processes, for our department staff to review those processes, and to have an opportunity for that to come back to us, and for staff to say, you know what, we do have this policy, but I don't know if it really fits here. A good example is, I know Commissioner Polian early on talked about a fee resolution. So I was like, what would that look like? And it's almost like in the regulatory world that you adopt something by reference. So when you adopt something by reference, you don't have to go in and open up the reg and change it all over again. If you're using a documented if it's documented reference, then if the reference changes, then you just change the language of that. You don't have to go back through everything. That sounds like an efficient, effective process. It could be. I think that's a discussion that we can have one-on-one, or we can have it collectively, whatever. I think teach his own. But I think that's a way of saying, is this a process that would benefit us as a governing body, but most importantly, will it benefit those who are the administrators of that work? So I don't want to ask them to do something if it's not going to be efficient and effective for them. But it is worth having a conversation. I think it's a conversation around efficient and effective, not necessarily that I don't like to, like, why do we have this all over the place, and why don't we do this? I don't want to get into the why. I just want to know, if we do change it, is it going to make things efficient and effective? I don't have time to worry about interpretations, because those interpretations are just that. They're not the fact. So if the goal is for us to understand our processes, to see if there are deficiencies in our administrative processes that this governing body needs to make changes, I'm all for that. And I do believe that is kind of the story we've been getting year after year, and that we are especially getting this year, is that it's not about yet again. I don't want to yet again. I'd love to have a clear, unmodified. I think anybody would want that. But because we had two weaknesses, and we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I feel like we're given a throw the baby out with the bathwater vibe right now. And I don't think that is a good, that solves nothing. We know that of the 4 findings, 3 were related to one thing that we know the background on, and we understand it, and we've been briefed on that. So we know that that's in place. So we're really looking at one piece, in my opinion. We're looking at one process that has been corrected. It's in the finding. It's in the corrective action. So I'm not going to use that to say, it's the iceberg and I don't know what's going on up under. But I do believe there's an opportunity for us to say, hey, let's take a pause. Let's take a look let's do an assessment of our processes to see if there is a gap. Now that we have fresh eyes and perspective, and bring it back to the commission and say, you know what, we could really use some tightening in this policy. Because again, I don't know the processes. So I'm not going to assume something because I don't know, because I live on the policy side. I don't live in the administrative side. So I'm going to allow the team to do the administrative work based on the charge that I give them, to then bring it back to me and say, you know what, governing body, I need you to do your job. I need you to fix this policy. So this is what the audit means to me. This is how I interpret the audit, that there's an opportunity to give, like we said, the work back to staff, to do the work internally, to then say if there's something that they need us to do, to bring it back to us and say, governing body, make this happen, or don't make it happen. So every year I pick up on something, and I'm not going into finance after this, or not even in consulting, but it does help me it helps to increase my understanding of possibilities, but also how we can what our role is in making sure that those processes are effective and efficient. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, we have work to do, but it's good work.
That was really constructive. Commissioner Polian?
100% yes. To Commissioner Seller's point, always trying to figure out how we can improve, but also celebrate our successes, which we've had many. But we have a lot going on, right? So maybe going back, taking a look back, maybe there's certain areas that we misstep in more than other areas, If it ain't on fire kind of concept, I'm good with it, 1 or 2 moments. But if we've got some areas that we identify more regularly than others, in whatever process we decide to take, that is a great opportunity. That's where we go, yeah, there's a common denominator here. That's the whole point of all of this. So, but I would, if I may, ask Majid, please, what your thoughts are on this. It was previously brought up. This is administrative in nature, which is not us, that is you. How do you feel about all of it?
So thank you for the question, and appreciate all the commissioners for their points, and trying to seek stability, obviously, in our finances. Look, I'm going to be really blunt and say I'm not the shining armor, right? I'm part of a very strong team, and together as a team we're going to resolve this. I can bring in different perspectives and expectations on what needs to happen, but it takes the entire team to work together on this. Obviously, we have issues that we need. Well, let me take that back. We have opportunities to look at our debt service and how we manage that. I will tell you, unfortunately, the debt service is the task of the commission, but you will be as good as the recommendations that we provide for you. And so I want to make sure that we, the team, provide you with the best recommendations and always options, instead of saying, here's one deal, you just gotta have to live with it. I think that's important to do. We need to look at our processes. When you create a system of order, you get an outcome of order. And when a system is not created, you're going to have some hodgepodge stuff. So that's really, really important. One of the things that I've shared with the team is that we're starting the 28-29 budget and 29-30 budget in October of this year. We're not going to wait until April to try to figure things out. That, to me, that's too late. But we also need to look at, you've heard me say that, I think, in my interview where I said, sacred cows make the best burgers. True. especially in a city administrator's life. Those are some of the legacy programs that we call legacy programs. Some of the projects that we've been doing, we're going to have to make tough choices. And we're going to have to look at pretty much everything that we're doing. And that's really important. Operation, capital, debt service, fees. You know, we have expenditures outpacing the revenues. How do we increase revenues? Those are some of the things that we need to take a look at. How do we decrease or look at some of the deficiencies or some of the challenges that we have in our operation? All of that are part of that philosophy that we need to really take a look at, right? The one thing I would tell you as a city manager, I don't do layoffs. That's your task, obviously. I would never recommend layoffs. I would never recommend furloughs and things that would be impactful to the employees, because I am as good as my coworkers, the employees who do the work. And so it's imperative that we have the right resources to provide the right programs that and in the right initiatives that you set out for us and the community sets out for us. So other than that, everything is for review, if you will. And I'm trying to choose my comments very carefully. I'm usually a little bit more animated than that, staff will tell you. But I just want to make sure that we heard you loud and clear, and that was my expectation and task, including some of the common challenges that I've heard us repeatedly. Debt service, fiscal impact, things that really affect us directly. So we're going to have to make tough choices, but those tough choices have to be the right choices as well.
So it sounds like, yes, you're interested in a review. Do you want to come back at a later date and tell us if you need anything from us? I think it should be.
No, I heard it loud and clear.
Okay, so you will go back, you will do these reviews, you'll let us know after the fact you'll update us, obviously. Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I love that we are tackling every issue that comes through, but that is the question it begs the question to me, do we have larger systemic issues, not just approaching the individual? Yes, we can address getting any refundings put in. We can, is there a bigger picture? And that's okay. So if we have findings next year, but we've identified systems and we just couldn't get it, that major progress is worth everything. I'm not going to throw a fit if we have findings again next year if we haven't had major progress.
Sure.
But progress is everything, right?
But I also don't see the correlation to the causation. So if we have findings next year, if it's findings in the same thing, then I think there's a conversation to be said. But if there's findings in something totally different, that's why I said creating this lore of saying, well, I don't want us to have deficiencies, but if we do have them, I want to make sure we did this to make sure we didn't. We don't know what we don't know. So let's start with a baseline of having departments go through and see if they understand the interpretation of their systems and does it align with policy, and then if it doesn't, then bring it back to us. But and I think that's where we live. I don't want to live in saying, well, if we don't do this and we have a deficiency next year, it's because we didn't do this. Because the findings don't show that. They don't show that correlation.
Departments should know their vulnerabilities. Okay, and you always want to look at what's called the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If a department director doesn't know his or her SWOTs, we're in trouble, I'll tell you. So I'm sure every department director knows what their SWOT analysis is. Is it written? Is it somewhere where we're actually tackling that SWOT analysis and saying, okay, what are we good at? What are we really not, to par at? Okay, what are some of the internal and external threats that we have? What are some of the opportunities? And here's how we can work on it. Creating that system is really important, because if we don't know what our vulnerabilities are, we're going to fall in the same mistakes again. Okay, if we don't know what our strengths are, they say you work on your strength and your vulnerability at the same time. You want to continue to strengthen your position, but at the same time you also want to work on your weaknesses and do a full analysis on that. I don't want to get too philosophical on this, but it is really important at the department level, at the basics, as you said, Commissioner, to go and say, what are we doing right? What are we not doing right? And how do we improve that? And so that's at the basic level, at least. That I will do a much better job if I know what those analyses are, and be able to work with the rest of the city manager's office on making sure that the directors and the departments are very diligent at addressing those with specific timelines. All right. Well, hopefully next year's audit is going to show nothing, right? But we're a very sophisticated organization. We have I don't know how many funds we have, Rochelle. I don't want to take a guess. 2,500 maybe. Funds. I don't know. I mean, I'm serious, and we have so many, functions that we're doing, so many initiatives, but we have to have control of all of them to succeed fully, and that's my goal and objective, is to make sure that we have control. I've talked to one of my colleagues, and we were talking about a different subject, and I said, when I was a project manager, I knew every single detail about a project. I knew the project budget, I knew the project expenditure, I knew who the project manager is, all of that. It was intimate, and we need to get to that level of learning that from level A to level Z in the organization. So it is imperative to do that, and I'm very excited, and I'm welcoming it with open arms that we need to do that, and the team is very excited as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Dever, any thoughts?
I just want to thank everybody for spending time and energy looking into this. I know it's hard to comprehend some of these financial terminology and I would say processes, but for me, I think I'm pretty happy with how things have turned out. I'm disappointed, and I think, as others have pointed out, we know what's been going on at the airport, unfortunately, and we've been kept up to date. And I think what we didn't know was related to more federal regulatory compliance than really any, general malfeasance that I could see. So for me, that's a good sign. And otherwise, I'm looking forward to having an expert look at us and our finances every year, if that's something we want. But more importantly, I want leadership in the organization to activate the staff that we already pay well and assure that they're doing the best job they can, and that we, as hopefully the overall governing body, are able to see when things are going wrong and can fix them before they become a major deficiency. And so these processes and procedures are important, but we have to have the people to carry out the functions, right? And so turnover is bad, and I appreciate some of the city employees coming up and speaking to some of the issues, and I know they're out there, and I'm sure that a new city manager will dig into some of these complaints. But overall, I feel pretty strongly that we're doing our best for the city and for the community to document how we're spending their money. And I think that's ultimately what the mission of this audit is, per se. And I think that's the thing we need to focus on, is the 99.999% of the other transactions that were carried out effectively and correctly. So for me, that's, as a guy that audits people regularly, I understand that my job is to find something, and I understand that I'm going to find something if, people are human. So what I want to see is the least amount of errors in an organization with the highest efficiency and the best people. And hopefully we can keep our people around and we can see these processes through, and we have achieved some of Commissioner Bullion's goals by the end of the year.
Sorry.
Oh, please.
I was just going to thank everybody involved. Finance, I know you have a tough road. I really, honest to God, do. So we are here if you need something.
Yep, just thank you guys for this. And, especially on the software side, if there's anything to, Commissioner Seller's point where you need us to make a decision that helps you out and it's halfway through the year, I'd rather know 6 months in than 12 months in. And so anything that we can do, again, to help them, and for city staff, if they don't feel comfortable reaching out to one of us, please, Majid's new, reach out to him, cultivate that relationship. And, it's, what can we do to run the city more efficiently, in a better way, to be, financial stewards. And so if something's coming up and you're seeing it, just, please reach out, and then we can either talk about it as a governing body, they can talk about it as an executive team, but rather have that than just not having that, I guess. But any other comments before we close out this work session? Okay, we'll close that out. Next item on the list is commission items. If any commissioners have items they would like to discuss, I guess I'm number one, so I'll go first. So draft 2 fixed all the random fonts and sizes, and then next week I'll have the final thing, and then when the mayor gets back, I'll talk to him about how we want to talk about that, if we want to talk about that here, if we want it to be just a final draft, we'll talk about it in September. We'll figure that out together. That's all I have.
Vice Mayor, if we have questions about some of the numbers in this presentation, do you want them to go to staff so that they can be collectively answered and sent out to everybody?
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yep. I did, in there, in the notes in the PowerPoint, there is in the Balancing Act where it came from, the numbers that were there, or referencing the questions and answers that we've had over the past month and change in that document that Sherry sends out. But yeah, 100%. Like, if you want to send it to Sherry or Majid and he can share it with the commission, that's fantastic. Okay, if there's no other, Commissioner Dever, any commissioner?
Yeah, I just want to add something while it's fresh in my mind. The quality of the audio is really poor, and I know we've had some complaints from some of our frequent users, and there was another comment tonight, so I wanted to point it out. I thought it could be me because my camera and bandwidth doesn't allow it, but since others are experiencing it, I'd like to make sure we all know that there are serious audio deficiencies in there, and I'd love to maybe run a test and see how we can fix it, because if anyone has to endure this every day, as an outsider who wants to try to listen deeply, it's very difficult to hear some of you, very, very difficult. So I just want to let you know that.
Yeah, and just so you know, Sherry and Kurt were working on it. There's a new camera or something that was plugged in, and they didn't want to unplug it and then plug it back in the middle of the meeting, which could have made something worse. But yeah, maybe 10, 15 minutes before every session, maybe we do something where we can test.
We do test them. It's an issue like that we're not going to be able to fix. Court is in here during the day. We have a lot of changing of things. It is something we're talking about tonight. We don't have our full. Some of these are not working to the Zoom, but Kurt has been able to record everything. They're fine in the room, so when we do post the video after the fact, the audio will be fine. It's just the folks on Zoom, the feed that's going into Zoom is not working appropriately.
Gotcha.
So
Awesome, thank you. I just thought I wanted to bring it up because I've been, I've heard it before, and I wanted to make sure that it wasn't me, so thank you.
What's funny is that you've actually been super loud. It's been super clear from you all night.
That's good, for once, right?
So a public broadcasting quality system is needed for this chamber. I mean, the sound is not as good of a quality, and of course the not just the audio but the video, and that's something that we're looking at. We're pricing out and see where we can improve on it. I've already talked to our audio video folks about getting us a better system and understanding what that would cost us, and we'll come back to the commission with some recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Sellers, any commission items? Okay, Commissioner Polian, anything? Okay, well, we're at the end of the night. Sherry, commission items, is that public comment? Okay, I didn't think so. Okay, well, so just looking for a motion to adjourn.
Oh, future agenda items and calendar.
Oh, sorry, my bad. That was on the next page. Anything we want to add to the calendar or any questions about future items that are coming up?
No, sir.
We had talked, it was alluded to or that we may have a study session at the end of the month, so are we going to have a resolution or a special meeting?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
We'll have to have a resolution for a special meeting or change our ordinance on when we have meetings.
Okay,
To do that, something will need to be coming forward.
okay.
Okay, makes sense.
So do we, we got 4, so do we want to go ahead and have staff bring to us next week a resolution for a special meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. I definitely don't want the mayor to show up and be like, we have 4 meetings now, ha, 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 ha.
I'm just saying, that I'm more than likely, I probably won't be here. I have some events going on for National Black Business Month, so I just said that because that's what process is, but I'm not going to ask for something if I'm not going to be here for it. So
No,
I'll say that is, we would need, if we're going to have a 4th meeting, we would need to have direct staff to bring back a resolution next week.
But you all could just call a special meeting if we don't have something prepared in terms of adding a 4th
Okay.
meeting. If we're just talking about to have one this month,
Okay.
you all can
Just call
sign a call for
Call for it.
special meeting.
Okay.
And you don't need to adopt.
Something to
an
consider for
ordinance
next
for
week.
that.
I'll also be
For a
remote 4th week too, if we end up doing that, so it won't just be you.
We can talk about it more next week as far as if it's something in perpetuity but at least establish the end of this month, give us more time, right? That's kind of the idea.
It's up to the commission. My idea is to bring more information, not frankly just to the commission, but hopefully to the community, so the community can understand, can better understand the intricacies of the work that is done behind the scene. Everyone knows what a sausage looks like, but how to make that sausage behind the scenes sometimes is not it's not known. So it's important for us to continue educating ourselves. And frankly, I'd love those meetings because then you can hear the department's perspective, and then you can offer a perspective on what you hear and say, what if you look at this? And that gives me an opportunity and the team an opportunity to kind of learn also some of the things that could be, not visible to the city manager and their team.
Oh, sounds great. I mean, would you imagine there would be a couple like low-hanging fruit consent items too, or would it just be a work session?
My preference, but it's your meeting, so let me take that back.
Okay.
Whatever your preference is. It was intended to be an information session, but if there's a couple of consent items that are going to be subject to discussions, then we're, I mean, my whole idea, and again, I think I shared it with all of you, is to have as a controlled, I don't want to use the word controlled, as less time as possible in those meetings, because, after 12, 13, 14 hours of work, there's exhaustion, and I want to make sure that staff is fully aware, and you are fully functional, if you will, after all that long day. Just my perspective.
So you don't want to recess till about 5 minutes before 11? We'll come back and do it then? Then you don't want to do it? No, just joking. That's the... Well, sounds good to me. Any other questions or comments before we look for an adjournment? Okay. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second? I'm going to second then. Second. So,
Commissioner Dever to do.
motion to adjourn by Commissioner Polian, second by Commissioner Dever. All those in favor say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Good night.
Passes 3-1.
Hey.
Good night.